A voice echoes across the evening sky, calling out for Mumyeong. A young, ragged boy on the ground hears it and thinks the voice is calling from the heavens. Cheon Mu-ryang, the powerful head of the heavenly clan, looms over him with a single command: protect this child. From that moment on, the nameless boy is given a purpose and a reason to keep living. He looks up stunned as his entire world shifts in a heartbeat. Behind his father's robes, the young Cheon Mu-ryang hides, trembling and small. Mumyeong realizes now that he was young and naive back then. The boy he was sworn to protect was already a coward, clinging to his father for dear life. He didn't know the pathetic child would eventually grow up to be the ruin of his entire family. He bows low, pledging his total loyalty to the man who would one day betray him. 15 years pass in the blink of an eye. The rain pours down on the clan estate after the sudden death of the family head. As the glory of the clan fades, Mu-ryang's behavior only gets more pathetic and self-destructive. Bodies litter the courtyard as the clan's influence and power vanish overnight. Most of their people flee, leaving the sinking ship while they still can. But through all the carnage and chaos, Mumyeong refuses to leave his side. He spends his life acting as a shield for a man who doesn't deserve it. Mu-ryang can only grit his teeth in terror as the world falls apart around them. Shadows move through the rain as the real threat finally arrives at their doorstep. Suddenly, a blade bursts through Mumyeong's chest from behind, catching him completely off guard. It's the jade-hilted dagger he recognizes all too well, held by the very person he was protecting. He gasps, looking back to see Mu-ryang's face as the reality of his betrayal sinks in. He's shaking, his face twisted with a desperate, pathetic kind of madness. Mumyeong coughs up blood, his strength failing as his life leaks onto the floor. He falls to his knees, realizing that some people are just born broken. The enemies stand at the gates, watching the pathetic scene unfold with cold indifference. The demonic cult's warriors surround the courtyard, their red cloaks stark against the gray rain. Mu-ryang tries to bargain for his own skin, gesturing wildly while he begs for mercy. The cultists don't stop, they just keep moving forward like an inevitable tide of death. Mumyeong struggles to breathe, his vision blurring as the blood continues to pool. He looks at his master one last time, his eyes filled with nothing but cold realization. He asks him if he really thought these monsters would let him live just for handing over his head. The idea that the demon cult would help him rebuild what he destroyed was a delusion. He honestly believed that this cowardly betrayal was his ticket to survival. Lightning cracks across the dark sky, illuminating the ruins of a once great clan. He glares at him with his final bit of strength, telling him he was wrong about everything. Thunder rolls as the final moments of the heavenly clan approach. The leaders of the cult step into the light, umbrellas in hand as if they're just taking a stroll. A woman with a face stitched together laughs at the sheer absurdity of the man's plea. Behind her, a man wearing a bone-white demon mask stands ready to finish the job. Mu-ryang screams in pure, unadulterated terror as his fate finally catches up to him. A hulking warrior looms over him, telling him that if he wanted to live, he should have never brought them into this. Mu-ryang screams as he tries to outrun the inevitable, his voice lost in the thunder and the rain. On the cold floor, Mumyeong bleeds out, his final thoughts a bitter realization that he should have never served a master so worthless. He looks toward the heavens, wondering if the late clan head is watching his legacy crumble in the mud. In his mind, he sees himself fighting off the cultists one last time, even though he knew his master wasn't worth the effort. A vision of the old lord looms over his younger self, while the current Mumyeong can only regret not abandoning that trash years ago. His sword clatters to the ground, the sound lost in the storm as his duty finally ends in blood. He kneels in the rain, gasping for air as his life fades away amidst the bodies of those he failed to save. The rain continues to pour, washing away the blood of a fallen clan as the night deepens. The cultists stand like statues in the rain, and Mumyeong realizes there's no point in blaming anyone anymore. With his last breath, he closes his eyes, carrying only the weight of his deep regrets into the dark. His vision blurs into a single point of light as the world disappears. He remembers his childhood, a nameless, ragged boy who was only given the name Mumyeong after the heavenly clan took him in. To him, the name was just a reminder that he was nameless, a shadow meant to serve the estate. The memory of the storm remains, the lightning flashing one last time in his mind's eye. He wishes that if he were to be born again, he could have a real name of his own. As the cultists' blades find their mark, he prays that his next life will be anything but his own. The sword of the Nameless One lies abandoned in a pool of blood and rainwater. A strange sensation of coldness washes over her as everything finally goes quiet. He thinks that death is a surprisingly cold thing as he lets go of his final spark of consciousness. Suddenly, he feels the warmth of water on his skin and the sensation of someone washing his feet. His eyes snap open, the light of a room far too bright for the battlefield he just left. A young maid is kneeling before him, carefully pouring water over his feet as if nothing happened. Mu-ryang, now inhabited by Mumyeong's soul, jumps back in shock, sending the maid into a panic. He looks around the opulent room, his heart racing as he realizes he's somehow still alive. The memory of being riddled with cultist blades is still fresh, yet there's not a single scratch on him. The maid, Walyong, drops to the floor and begs for forgiveness, terrified that the water has cooled down too much. Mumyeong remembers her. She was the maid who served the first son since they were children and bore the brunt of his abuse. Walyong continues to sob, pleading for the young master to find it in his heart to forgive her small mistake. He tells her to forget it and move on, but he's confused about why she's calling him young master. His mind is reeling as he wonders where the real Cheon Mu-ryang has gone. Walyong looks up at him with tear-filled eyes, her expression one of pure confusion. She confirms the one thing he didn't want to hear, that he is, in fact, the first son, Cheon Mu-ryang. He reaches up to touch his face, his fingers sinking into the bloated, unfamiliar flesh of his cheeks. He looks down at himself, horrified to see the soft, pampered body of the man he used to despise. The mirror reveals the truth. He's trapped in the fat, ugly body of the very man who betrayed him. He stares out at the moon over the estate, realizing that this nightmare is very much a reality. He sits on the bed, processing the impossible fact that he's been reborn 15 years in the past. Silence fills the room as he stares at his hands, his mind struggling to accept his new existence. He asks the maid if there's anyone named Mumyeong in the clan, but she's never heard of such a person. It sinks in that since he is now Cheon Mu-ryang, the boy he once was no longer exists in this world. He stands by the window, realizing this might be his one chance to save the clan from its future destruction. He opens the window wide to the night air, vowing to find a way to protect his family before the tragedy repeats. Mu-ryang stands in the middle of his quarters, his brow furrowed as he takes in his surroundings. He looks around the sparse room, wondering why the first son's accommodations are so surprisingly pathetic. The space is barely larger than what a standard trainee would receive, which strikes him as odd for someone of his status. His gaze drifts across the room, settling on a particular item that catches his eye. He spots a sword resting on a display rack, its presence seemingly out of place in such a humble setting. For a moment, a traumatic memory of being run through with a blade flashes before his eyes, the rain and blood feeling all too real. He gasps in realization as he recognizes the weapon, the legendary Heavenly Light sword. Legend says the blade was forged from a single ray of light, meant to pierce through the ultimate darkness. He reaches out and takes the sword into his hands, marveling at the treasure granted only to the first son of the heavenly clan. A cold sweat breaks out on his face as the weight of his new reality truly begins to sink in. With a trembling hand, he begins to draw the blade, the sound of steel against scabbard echoing in the quiet room. The unsheathed sword emits a brilliant glow, its power practically humming in the palm of his hand. He stares at the magnificent craftsmanship, realizing it's on a completely different level than any sword he's ever wielded before. He attempts a simple practice swing, but the weight of the blade and his own lack of coordination catch him off guard. After just a few movements, he's already hacking and coughing, his body completely unaccustomed to any physical exertion. He pushes himself to continue, but every motion feels like an uphill battle against his own out-of-shape form. His knees buckle under the strain, and he collapses to the floor with a heavy thud. He stays down for a moment, sweat dripping onto the floorboards as he gasps for air. It's a shocking realization that his breathing and muscles are already at their absolute limit after such minimal effort. Outside, the moon hangs high over the silent estate, a stark contrast to the internal struggle taking place within the manor. Mu-ryang sits cross-legged on the floor, attempting to focus his mind and tap into whatever internal energy this body might possess. He thinks back to how much his past self must have neglected training to end up in such a pitiable state. Normally, internal energy should flow smoothly from the dantian through the meridians, powering the body. However, he discovers a massive blockage. Huge amounts of energy are trapped within his dantian, unable to circulate. To make matters worse, these different energies are clashing violently, causing internal damage to his meridians. He recognizes the symptoms immediately, a classic case of the golden spoon chi deviation from overconsuming expensive elixirs. The next morning, the sun rises over the training hall, where the sounds of practice are already echoing through the air. Trainees in blue robes go through their drills in the courtyard, their wooden swords cutting through the air in unison. During a sparring match, one trainee takes a hard blow to the head, the wooden sword making a loud cracking sound on impact. The student falls to the ground, clutching his head and yelling at his opponent for using full force during a simple spar. His opponent, a tall and arrogant-looking senior trainee, stands over him with a smug expression on his face. The senior trainee scoffs, telling the younger boy to stop acting like a coward and reminding him that he promised to win with one hand. He demands that the loser cough up the cash from their bet, offering to go again if he's feeling particularly salty. Suddenly, the arrogant senior trainee's expression shifts to one of pure shock as he looks toward the entrance. He and the other trainees turn their heads, unable to believe what they are seeing. Mumyeong has arrived at the training grounds, looking determined despite his heavy frame and the wooden sword in his hand. The crowd begins to whisper, shocked that the trash first son has finally decided to set foot in the training grounds for the first time. Mumyeong is already panting and sweating just from the walk over, his body barely able to handle even a wooden sword. The senior trainee laughs and tells him to just get lost, claiming that nobody wants him around anyway. Mumyeong ignores the insults, deciding that his top priority isn't sword training, but losing all this excess fat first. The other trainees watch in stunned silence, wondering what could have possibly possessed him to come here. Without another word, Mumyeong begins to run laps around the courtyard, his heavy footsteps thumping against the stone floor. The other trainees watch from the sidelines as Mumyeong continues his clumsy run around the perimeter of the training ground, his heavy frame struggling with every step. One of the students remarks to the senior trainee that the young lord doesn't seem to have any intention of leaving despite the obvious mockery. The senior trainee narrows his eyes, a malicious smirk playing on his lips as he decides to make Mumyeong regret ever stepping foot onto the practice field. Heavy footsteps thud against the wooden deck. Cheon Mu-ryang is pushing this body to its absolute limit, even if he's barely moving. Every breath feels like he's swallowing glass. This is way worse than he expected. His body is a complete disaster, clogged with decades of high-grade elixirs that have turned into a toxic sludge. He can't believe the original Mumyeong wasted all this potential by being lazy. Suddenly, the sound of slicing air catches his attention. A silver flash streaks right past his head. A heavy sword slams into the wooden pillar with a violent thud. He stops in his tracks, staring at the vibrating blade. This wasn't some wooden training tool. This was a real sharpened sword. A mocking voice rings out, claiming the sword just slipped during practice. It's Noong Rai-woon and a group of disciples, and they're clearly enjoying the show. Rai-woon wears a smug grin, looking down on the young master with total contempt. Mumyeong just glares back, realizing exactly where he stands in this family's hierarchy. They mockingly suggest he should go hide in his room before he gets accidentally killed. His gaze hardens. He's definitely not the same coward they used to bully. Rai-woon is convinced that a little intimidation is all it takes to send him running. He offers another fake apology, not even bothering to make it sound believable. Mumyeong plays along, scratching his head and thanking them for their concern. He turns around and goes right back to his jogging, ignoring the sneers. Rai-woon was stunned to see him stubbornly pushing forward, while a few others already began demanding their winnings. They head off to grab drinks with their winnings, leaving the courtyard behind. Rai-woon grinds his teeth, visibly annoyed that his target didn't break. Mumyeong's feet keep pounding against the ground, his focus entirely on the task at hand. He knows they're trash, but he also knows his own current limits. Fighting now would just end in a beatdown, so he decides to seek a different kind of strength. He heads for the heavenly dragon library, hoping to find a way to fix his internal energy. As the eldest son, he figures entry should be a given. The sun begins to set over the sprawling clan estate. He arrives at the library gates, but the response he gets is a total shock. He stares at the guard, asking him to repeat those words one more time. The guard just sighs, looking at him with zero respect. He makes it clear, Mumyeong has been officially stripped of his position as successor. The news hits him like a punch to the gut. Entry is denied. He's been completely cut off from the clan's secret techniques. His legs are shaking, and it's not just from the exercise anymore. He barely manages to stumble back to his room before collapsing on the bed. He sits in the silence of his tiny, cramped quarters. The reality of being an outcast is finally starting to sink in. Without the library, finding a way to absorb the elixirs just became much more difficult. He's going to have to find another path to power. Looking around his room, he realizes the original Mumyeong's life was a mess from the start. Cheon Mu-ryang's body was a wreck, poisoned by years of unrefined elixirs. In my past life, I was an escort warrior who died at the hands of the very man I swore to protect. But I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for the mess I'm in. The original Mumyeong was a traitor who led his entire clan to their deaths. It's no wonder he had no allies. He earned every bit of his isolation through his own behavior. I was a loner in my past life too, but only because I was obsessed with martial arts. I looked down at the meal sitting on my table. It's just a giant pile of mushrooms. I seriously have to wonder how anyone could get this fat, eating nothing but vegetables. As I eat, I realize there's actually one person who hasn't completely abandoned me. Night falls over the estate, and I head back out to continue my training. I refuse to let even a single hour of the day go to waste. The sound of my heavy footsteps is the only thing breaking the silence of the night. I stop to catch my breath, my lungs burning with every inhale. It's pathetic how a simple warm-up is enough to leave this body completely drained. Mumyeong steps out onto the porch, surprised to see me up so late. She's carrying a basket of laundry and asks if I'm really planning to keep training. I give her a short nod and wish her a good night. She turns to leave, but I notice the weight of the basket she's carrying. I ask if that's my laundry she has there. She spins around immediately, looking like she's about to be executed for a crime. She apologizes profusely, explaining that she accidentally dozed off while waiting for me. I know she isn't a warrior, but she's the only person in this entire family I can actually trust. I start walking toward her, making her flinch in anticipation of a lecture. Instead, I place a hand on her shoulder and give her a simple thanks. She looks at me like I've lost my mind. The old Mumyeong never used to be this kind. I tell her she's going to have a lot more work to do since I plan on making plenty of laundry. I jog off before she can respond, leaving her standing there in total shock. She stares after me, unable to reconcile this version of her master with the one she knew. The training continues long after the rest of the world has gone to sleep. I push through the darkness, focusing on nothing but the rhythm of my feet. My body is screaming at me to stop, but I refuse to give in to the pain. I'm gasping for air, sweat stinging my eyes as I push harder. For a second, I honestly feel like my heart is going to give out right here. But a flash of a memory from my past life gives me a sudden burst of resolve. I can hear the sharp crack of a training staff hitting home. I remember being a young boy named Mumyeong, getting scolded by my master for a sloppy strike. While the other kids were getting ready for the New Year's festival, I was forced to hold a sword. My master didn't care about festivals, he only cared about my discipline. Even as a child, I had the cold, focused eyes of someone who lived only for the blade. I can still hear him calling me slow, even after all these years. On the other side of the yard, a young, spoiled Mumyeong was begging his father to see the lantern parade. Back then, I never really made any decisions for myself. I just did what I was told. I only picked up a sword to repay the man who took me in when I was nothing but a nameless orphan. But things are different now. This time I'm doing this for me, and it's actually fun. I push myself harder than ever before, the cold night air filling my lungs as I run. From the shadows, Mumyeong watches me with a mixture of concern and disbelief. She can't believe the young master she once knew is the same man she's seeing now. My legs eventually give out and I tumble to the ground, the fatigue finally catching up. But I don't stay down. I force myself back up, proving to myself that I can keep going. The rain starts to pour, but I don't let it stop me. I just keep my pace in the downpour. A group of disciples stands under the shelter of a porch, watching me with open disdain. They've been betting on whether or not I'd actually show up to train again today. Mumyeong is clearly frustrated, calling my efforts pathetic and annoying. One of the others warns him that I might hear him, but he doesn't seem to care one bit. He's convinced that even if I somehow became the patriarch, I'd never have any real power. They're already planning their futures, assuming I'm just a lost cause who can be ignored. Mumyeong continues to mock me, convinced that I'm just putting on a performance. His friend tells him to knock it off, knowing he's just bitter about losing the bet. They head back inside to escape the cold rain, leaving me alone in the courtyard. But Mumyeong can't seem to let it go, his eyes full of resentment as he looks back. He watches me run through the puddles, his mind racing with suspicion about my motives. He's convinced that a pig like me must be scheming something behind everyone's backs. He thinks I'm only pretending to train so I can try and win back my former title. I can hear every word they say, their insults cutting through the sound of the falling rain. Mumyeong spits on the ground, annoyed that I'm ignoring him instead of reacting. He doesn't realize that he isn't the only one watching me from the shadows. Mumyeong stands there with a bundle of clothes, her expression uncharacteristically stern. She looks like she's about to boil over with rage at the way they're talking about me. The morning sun rises, bringing a new day and a fresh start to my daily training. I head to the weapon rack, my eyes landing on the long rows of training swords. I reach out and wrap my fingers around the hilt of a heavy wooden blade. It feels right in my hand, a familiar weight that I've missed more than I realized. I start to go through the basic forms, the muscle memory from my past life guiding me. A small smile tugs at my lips as I realize I'm finally making some real progress. I've built up enough strength to handle a sword, which will only speed up the elixir absorption. Suddenly, the sound of an argument breaks my concentration, and I look toward the commotion. A group of disciples has gathered around someone, their voices raised in anger. A voice screams out, defending me against their insults with a surprising amount of ferocity. I'm stunned. I never expected anyone in this place to actually stand up for me like that. I see Mumyeong holding Mumyeong by her collar, and a wave of cold fury washes over me. Mumyeong has completely lost his cool. He grabs Mumyeong by the collar and demands she repeat herself. The maid doesn't flinch. She's tired of him bad-mouthing her master and tells him to take back his insults. The other disciples just hang back and laugh, enjoying the drama like it's a free show. Being challenged by a servant makes Mumyeong see red. He can barely contain his rage. His eyes are bloodshot. He's past the point of just being a bully. Despite the threat, Mumyeong stares him down with pure defiance. He's really going there. He draws his blade with a sharp ring. Mumyeong puts the sword right to her throat, threatening to shut her up for good. Suddenly, a sword flashes through the air and strikes Mumyeong's blade aside. The force of the hit nearly sends Mumyeong stumbling as his sword is knocked back. Cheon Mu-ryang steps in, protecting his maid with a sword of his own. Mumyeong can't believe what he's seeing. Mumyeong is just as stunned. The master she knows would never have stood up like this. Mumyeong's gaze is cold. The lazy scoundrel persona is completely gone. Rye-woon stammers, trying to process the sudden intervention from a guy he was just mocking. Mumyeong isn't interested in talk. He tells Rye-woon to point the blade at him instead. He makes it clear, if there's a problem with Wal-young, he's the one Rye-woon has to go through. He doesn't just block the path, he's issued a direct challenge. Rye-woon is taken aback. He wonders if Mumyeong is actually serious about a duel. Mumyeong takes it a step further. He wants a life-or-death match. They square off in the middle of the training ground. The tension is through the roof. Mumyeong sets the stakes. If Rye-woon wins, he'll drop the whole incident. On top of that, he promises to never show his face at the training grounds again. Wal-young tries to stop him, knowing he hasn't even practiced in over a month. Mumyeong just slams his scabbard into the dirt and readies himself. She's paralyzed by the sudden weight of his presence. This isn't the same man. He tells her he can handle being insulted himself. That doesn't bother him. But he draws the line at anyone hurting the people who are loyal to him. That is his one conviction. As he takes his stance, the spirit of the nameless assassin Mumyeong looms behind him. Mumyeong stares him down, daring him to draw his sword and start the fight. Rye-woon agrees. He thinks this is a perfect chance to finally get rid of the clan's failure. He figures since Mumyeong gave him an out, all he has to do is win this quick brawl. He's confident his training and speed will make short work of the scoundrel. Rye-woon keeps sneering, convinced he's still dealing with a weak, pathetic noble. But then the air around Mumyeong begins to warp with a heavy, suffocating aura. Rye-woon feels a sudden chill. This level of spiritual pressure shouldn't be possible for a failure like him. Mumyeong notices him freezing up and asks if he's already starting to feel afraid. The sheer murderous intent has Rye-woon paralyzed and sweating buckets. Since Rye-woon won't move, Mumyeong decides to take the first step and lunges forward. He moves with a speed that shouldn't belong to someone his size, closing the gap in an instant. But even that was far too slow. Rye-woon realized he could read Mumyeong's every move. The boy was still nowhere near his level of speed. He couldn't believe that the man he looked down on possessed such high-level skills. He was caught completely off guard. Mumyeong's eyes stay locked on him through the clash, cold and focused as a seasoned killer. The sound of the clash rings out across the training grounds as Mumyeong's blade connects. Rye-woon's sword is ripped from his hand and goes spinning high into the air. The weapon hits the ground with a heavy thud, vibrating from the sheer force of the strike. Rye-woon is left shaking, staring at his empty hand in total disbelief. He has no idea what just happened. The realization hits him. Mumyeong wasn't aiming for his body, but for the sword itself. Mumyeong used the momentum of Rye-woon's own swing to strip the weapon right out of his grip. Rye-woon is sweating now, wondering how a scoundrel could possibly know a technique like that. Mumyeong stands over him, scolding him for swinging his blade so carelessly in a life-or-death match. He asks if this pathetic display is really the best the Cheon family has taught him. Rye-woon drops to his knees, completely broken by the crushing humiliation. Mumyeong looks down at him and tells him he simply doesn't deserve to hold a sword. But the impact was so heavy that Mumyeong's own hand is split open and bleeding. He puts his blade away and tells Rye-woon to find a real reason for holding a sword before they ever meet again. Rye-woon is left kneeling in a daze, his pride and confidence shattered into pieces. Mumyeong doesn't even look back as he tells Wal-young it's time to go. Rye-woon reaches out as if he can't accept the result, but he's already been left behind. Mumyeong clenches his bleeding fist, masking the pain from the recoil of the clash. The other disciples watch in silence as the scoundrel walks away with his head held high. Back at the estate, the heavy door slides open as they return to their quarters. Mumyeong steps inside, finally away from the prying eyes of the clan. Wal-young immediately drops to the floor, apologizing for causing such a scene. She admits she just couldn't stand seeing them mock all the hard work he's been putting in lately. She starts sobbing, blaming herself for the injury to his hand. Mumyeong knows the wound is actually from using a high-level technique his current body can't handle yet. He tells her there's nothing to apologize for, since she was only standing up for him. Mumyeong looks up at him, shocked by the sudden gentleness in his voice. He tells her he doesn't care about insults to himself, but he won't tolerate anyone hurting those loyal to him. For the first time in years, she sees a spark of the leader he was always meant to become. Her mind drifts back to a memory from their childhood. A much younger Mu-ryang had told her he wanted to become strong one day. Holding an elephant lantern, he promised to become a family head powerful enough to protect everyone. The lantern glows brightly, a symbol of the pure resolve he once carried. He had even promised to protect her, even though she was taller than him back then. Back in the present, Mumyeong's tears hit the floor as the memory fades. She realizes the grand young master she always believed in is finally back. The memory of that innocent, determined boy overlaps with the man standing before her now. Suddenly, a booming voice cuts through the room, asking if he can really take responsibility for those words. Mumyeong and Mumyeong spin around, startled by the sudden and powerful presence. Mumyeong immediately goes back on guard, his hand tightening around his sword. It's his uncle, one of the three main pillars supporting the Cheon family. A tall, imposing man in a flowing cape walks into the room, radiating sheer power. Cheon, the Grand Master himself, looks absolutely furious as he stares his nephew down. Mumyeong bows low, offering a formal and humble greeting to his uncle despite the tension. Inside his mind, the soul within Mumyeong remembers the Grand Master he once trusted and followed most in his past life. He addresses the man simply as uncle, but the air between them is thick with hostility. Cheon snaps at him, dismissing his polite courtesies as pathetic and demanding he answer the question. Mumyeong reflects on the fact that the Grand Master's attitude toward him hasn't changed a bit in 15 years. He remembers that Cheon was the one who publicly declared the Grand Young Master had no hope of reform. But Mumyeong stands his ground, declaring that protecting his people is his true conviction. Cheon is clearly taken aback, repeating the words protect and conviction as if they're alien concepts to his nephew. The Grand Master isn't buying it. He points out that the technique Mumyeong used in the duel was the secret Dragon Claw. He accuses Mumyeong of learning the move from a traitor, since it's a secret known only to the heavenly dragon sword core. Cheon reasons that if this traitor cared enough to teach him, they must be one of the people Mumyeong wants to protect. He vows to find and severely punish this traitor, and anyone else who tries to shield them from the clan's wrath. With a cold, challenging look, he dares Mumyeong to try and stand by his words and protect them. Cheon warns that if he fails, he'll be held responsible for the duel and banned from the training grounds forever. Mumyeong realizes this is all just a convenient excuse for the Grand Master to finally get rid of him. He knows he's in a corner because there is no traitor. He knows the technique from his own past life. The Grand Master waits for an answer, his eyes fixed on Mumyeong with predatory intensity. Mumyeong stares back, knowing his next words will determine whether he keeps his place in the clan or loses everything. The crowd is losing it. The lazy, overweight young master they once knew is gone, replaced by this sharp-looking stranger. Everyone in the stands is whispering, trying to figure out how he dropped all that weight in just a few weeks. Cheon Mu-ryang doesn't pay them any mind. He just bows to his uncle and apologizes for the delay. Cheon Mu-ryang isn't interested in the formalities. He just wants to know if his nephew is actually ready to fight. Mu-ryang draws his wooden sword with a cool confidence. He's more than ready. Across the arena, Lee Seok-gi is waiting, looking completely unimpressed by the change. Lee thinks the weight loss just gave the kid a fake sense of ego. That calm look on Mu-ryang's face is starting to grate on his nerves. He grips his sword, thinking it's a joke that a former pig thinks he can win after only a month of training. He glances up at the balcony, wondering what exactly the Grand Master is trying to prove here. But then he realizes this is actually a perfect setup for him to climb even higher. The top sword captains of the family are all watching from above. Lee figures he'll just use Mu-ryang as a stepping stone to leave a lasting impression on the leadership. Mu-ryang sees right through the guy. He can practically hear him scheming to curry favor with the higher-ups. To him, Lee Seok-gi is nothing more than a parasite who clings to power and uses everyone around him. In his past life, this man climbed the ranks of the Sword Corps solely through political maneuvering and brown-nosing. He was always the first to flatter the right people and the last to actually show any real honor. His greed eventually led him to sell out every piece of family information to the demonic cult for a chest of gold. Mumyeong missed his chance to judge him back then, but he won't let this traitor-to-be slide a second time. Lee technically hasn't committed those crimes yet, but Mumyeong knows it's only a matter of time before his true nature shows. Lee keeps that smug grin on his face, thinking everything is still going exactly according to his plan. Mumyeong gives a thin, cold smile. The guy has no idea that his career is about to come to a screeching halt. He settles into a stance as the Grand Master announces that the match only ends when he calls it. The two fighters face off, the tension in the arena reaching a boiling point. Both men raise their wooden swords as the command to begin rings out across the grounds. Mumyeong doesn't waste a single second. He lunges forward like a bolt of lightning to land a preemptive strike. He closes the distance in an instant, aiming for a quick strike. Lee Seok-gi is caught off guard by Mumyeong's sudden move, but he can't help but smirk, looking down on such a basic tactic. With a powerful stomp, Mumyeong leaps high into the air and unleashes his signature strike. But to Lee Seok-gi, this was utterly mediocre. He figured Mumyeong was just using some bizarre techniques to catch people off guard. He thought he had already read Mumyeong like an open book. To him, the kid was just recklessly charging in to parry his blade, without any real skill or technique to speak of. He spins his blade, shifting his tempo to show that tricks won't work on him. Mumyeong remains intensely focused, his eyes tracking every slight rotation of his opponent's sword. Lee grips his handle with both hands, daring Mumyeong to try and knock this one away. The wooden blade cuts through the air with a sharp whistle. Wood slams against wood as their swords meet in a powerful clash. Lee is grinning, thinking he's overwhelming the kid, but Mumyeong's expression doesn't change. The top trainee immediately transitions into his next strike to keep the momentum. He goes for a low sweep, but Mumyeong effortlessly steps back out of the range. They trade a flurry of blows, the sound of wooden impacts echoing through the arena. Mumyeong grinds his teeth as he absorbs the force of the heavy strikes. Lee presses his attack relentlessly, easily retreating from any counter strikes, confident that the kid's stamina will eventually run dry. He fights with a relaxed, leisurely air, smugly thinking to himself that he'll show some mercy to the young master. But suddenly he seizes Mumyeong's arm. His mind has shifted. He's decided to end this little stroll right here and now. Lee Seok-gi isn't playing around anymore. He knows the Grand Masters are watching from above, and he needs to make sure he stands out. He tells himself not to feel too bad about what he's about to do to the scoundrel of the family. He moves in for a strike, confident that his speed and power will end the duel in a single exchange. A heavy hit lands, and Mumyeong is left gasping for air, clutching his ribs as he stumbles back. It looks like the gap in their experience is finally showing, and the former young master is out of his league. Lee Seok-gi doesn't miss the chance to gloat, striking a pose for the spectators in the balcony. He taunts Mumyeong, telling the grand young master to pay close attention to what real skill looks like. He prepares his final move, certain that this is the end of the show. Mumyeong seems completely open, unable to react as the blade comes swinging toward him. In a movement swift as a blade's edge, Lee Seok-gi unleashes a flurry of strikes upon Mumyeong. In his mind, Lee is already savoring the victory, certain his power has crushed the opposition. He's convinced there's no way Mumyeong could have countered a strike of that level. He sees Mumyeong fall to his knees, defeated and humiliated just as he expected. He thinks it's a bit of a shame his best performance was wasted on such a useless opponent. But at least the Grand Master's got a perfect view of his absolute dominance. He raises his fist in triumph, waiting for the cheers of the crowd to start rolling in. Everything went exactly according to his plan, and he stands tall as the victor. He tells himself to just bask in the glory of finally putting the family's black sheep in his place. But then he notices something weird. He can't hear any cheering and his vision starts to spin. He wonders why the entire training ground is suddenly lying on its side. He blinks, trying to make sense of the world, but his brain can't catch up to the perspective shift. That's when he notices a pair of boots standing right next to his face. He looks up and sees Mumyeong looming over him, completely untouched. Mumyeong just stares down at him and casually asks if he enjoyed his little nap. Reality hits him like a freight train. He's the one flat on his back, drooling and dazed. He tries to move, but his body is completely shut down. His nerves aren't responding at all. His eyes drift to the floor, where he sees the remains of his wooden sword. It's been snapped into several jagged pieces, completely destroyed. His memory finally kicks in, and he realizes that his victory was nothing but a delusion. He remembers the blinding flash of light as Mumyeong's blade cut straight through his attack. It was a strike so fast and heavy that it shattered his weapon and his pride in the same instant. Back then, Mumyeong had already seen through every single one of his moves. The look in Mumyeong's eyes was enough to tell him he never stood a chance. A single downward strike was all it took to settle the entire match. The impact had been so sudden and absolute that he didn't even feel himself hit the ground. Mumyeong had landed gracefully, while Lee was left in the dirt like a broken toy. The truth is humiliating. He lost to the very person he spent his life looking down on. He lies there in shock, unable to believe that a scoundrel like Mumyeong could do this. Mumyeong leans in and whispers a chilling judgment, calling him a potential turncoat. He tells Lee that he'll let him off for today, but he'll be keeping a very close eye on him from now on. Refusing to admit defeat, Lee Seok-gi convinced himself that he had simply let his guard down. He tells himself that anyone would make a mistake against someone who's only been training for a few months. Lee Seok-gi stares blankly at the stone floor, his mind racing to figure out how everything went so wrong. He realizes that his reputation and his standing within the family have been utterly shattered in just a few seconds. The surrounding trainees are left in a state of pure disbelief, whispering about how the match ended with a single move. Wal-young watches from the sidelines, tears of relief and worry streaming down her face as she clutches a sword to her chest. Mumyeong ignores the murmurs of the crowd and turns his gaze toward the balcony where the family's leaders are seated. Cheon Mu-ryang sits in silence, his stern face betraying nothing as he observes the boy he once considered a failure. Standing tall in the center of the training ground, Mumyeong looks like a completely different person than the one who entered the arena. The air on the balcony is heavy with a new kind of tension, as Cheon Mu-ryang continues to watch without a word. Mumyeong offers a cold, knowing smirk, satisfied that he's successfully shaken the foundation of everyone's expectations. The wide arena is quiet now, the shock of the sudden victory hanging over the trainees like a thick fog. In the crowd, a pair of hands grips a belt so tightly that the knuckles turn white with fury. Nung Rya-woon grits his teeth in rage, cursing the fool who failed to get rid of the family's scoundrel when they had the chance. The anger radiating from him is palpable, as he realizes that Mumyeong's presence in the family is going to be a much bigger problem than he anticipated. Cheon Mu-ryang stands tall as Lee Seok-gi is sent flying across the arena. The match ended before it even really started, leaving everyone in the training grounds completely stunned. This guy is officially out cold. The top trainee is face down on the ground, defeated by a single strike from a man everyone used to call a useless scoundrel. Our boy looks completely different, and it's not just the weight loss. There's a new fire in his eyes that tells everyone he's not the same person he was before. Cheon Mu-ryang sits in stunned silence, watching from his throne. He expected a quick defeat, but not like this. The power he just witnessed was truly something else. The crowd of disciples starts buzzing with disbelief. They can't wrap their heads around the fact that their top-ranked trainee just got wrecked in only one move by Mumyeong. Whispers fill the air as they wonder if he used some kind of shady trick to win. Nobody wants to believe the family scoundrel actually has this kind of skill. A trainee mutters that the scoundrel will just get cockier now, but Mumyeong stays silent. He's not acting arrogant at all. Instead, he looks incredibly calm and focused. Cheon Mu-ryang stands up, his cloak fluttering as he prepares to announce the victor. Even he can't hide the shock on his face after seeing such a perfect, decisive strike. Suddenly, our boy starts shouting, catching everyone off guard. He tells the whole crowd he knows exactly what they think of him and he's ready to address their complaints. The Grand Master listens intently, his expression unreadable. He's trying to figure out if this is just another one of his nephew's elaborate schemes or something much more profound. Mumyeong goes off, calling himself a piece of trash and a scoundrel right in front of everyone. He isn't holding anything back as he acknowledges all of his past misdeeds. Even the Grand Master and Mumyeong are completely baffled by this display of humility. This isn't just a physical change. His entire personality seems to have flipped overnight. The trainees are dead silent as they listen to him speak. The man they used to fear and despise is now standing before them, openly admitting to all his flaws. Memories of the old, bloated Mumyeong flash through their minds. Seeing the lean, determined warrior standing there now makes the whole situation feel like a fever dream for the disciples. He gazes at his hand, declaring he'll bear the weight of all his past sins. It's a heavy burden, but he seems more than ready to take it on himself. This guy clenches his fist with raw determination. He's done running from his reputation and is officially starting his journey toward redemption, no matter how hard the path gets. Facing the massive crowd of disciples, he stands with a posture that commands respect. For the first time, he looks like a true member of the powerful Cheon family. Our boy yells out a sincere apology for all his past behavior. It's a shocking move that leaves the entire training ground in a state of absolute and utter confusion. Then comes the real kicker. He actually bows deeply to the disciples. Seeing the most arrogant person in the clan show such humility is something no one ever expected to see. A wide shot shows the massive scale of the audience watching this historical moment. The silence is heavy as everyone tries to process the young master's sudden change of heart. The disciples exchange glances, totally unsure how to react to this new Mumyeong. They're stuck between their old hatred and the undeniable respect they just felt for his fighting skill. Mumyeong is nearly in tears as she watches her master from the sidelines. She's seen him at his worst, so seeing him take responsibility like this means everything to her. Cheon Mu-ryang stares down at his nephew, his mind racing with new possibilities. He realizes that the family's greatest disappointment might actually be the key to their future survival. Mumyeong stands his ground, finishing his speech with a look that says he's done running. He's finally putting it all out there, prepared for whatever consequences come his way. To top it off, he invites anyone with a grudge to settle it at the training grounds. Our boy is officially inviting trouble, and he's more than ready to throw down. Mumyeong stands in the center of the arena, shouting that he'll be right there for anyone who wants to challenge him. He's officially done hiding and is ready to face the world. This guy looks remarkably calm for someone who just invited the entire clan to fight him. He's got a new air of confidence that's making everyone second-guess everything they knew about him. The Grand Master watches him from above, silent and deep in thought. He didn't expect the family scoundrel to show such skill, and now he's starting to see him in a different light. After making his point, Mumyeong decides it's time to head out. He calls for Mumyeong to follow him, leaving the stunned crowd behind as they try to process what just happened. Cheon Mu-ryang remains behind, stroking his beard as he ponders his nephew's transformation. There's something about the boy's swordplay that feels familiar, yet entirely different from anything he's seen before. The sun shines down on the Cheon estate, signaling a new chapter for our boy. The atmosphere has completely shifted now that the scoundrel has proven he's actually a force to be reckoned with. As they walk, Mumyeong thanks Mumyeong for holding onto his sword during the match. He admits he only prepared it in case things got real, but her presence definitely gave him some support. Our boy reaches out to take the blade back, but Mumyeong pulls it away, looking totally shocked. She's grown surprisingly attached to the weapon and isn't ready to let it go just yet. Mumyeong is completely caught off guard by her reaction. He was just trying to be helpful, but it seems like his maid has found a new favorite item to carry around with her. This girl is literally hugging the sword, revealing she's even given it a cute nickname, Little Heaven. She tells him she needs to hold onto her new friend for just a bit longer. Our boy's face says it all. He's absolutely speechless. He never expected his legendary weapon to be called something so adorable, and he honestly doesn't know how to respond to that one. The conversation takes a serious turn when the Grand Master suddenly asks what he was seeking to cut with his sword. Mumyeong freezes, realizing the old man saw more than just a simple strike. He turns back to face his uncle, the weight of the question hanging heavy in the air. This isn't just about martial arts anymore, it's about the very soul of his sword path. Our boy is hit with a wave of nostalgia. He never thought he'd hear those specific words again in this lifetime, and it brings back memories of his past life as a master. Cheon presses him, admitting that the sword he showed earlier was something special. He wants to know the philosophy behind such a perfect move, and he isn't taking no for an answer. Without a second of hesitation, Mumyeong gives his answer. It's short, simple, and absolutely mind-blowing for anyone who understands the true depth of the blade. He was aiming for the very sky. He repeats it with a confident grin, declaring that he sought to cut the sky itself. It's an incredibly ambitious goal that most martial artists wouldn't even dare to dream of achieving. The Grand Master's eyes go wide with pure shock. He spent his entire life pursuing that exact same path, and hearing it from the clan's biggest failure is making him question his reality. He realizes that this scoundrel understands the path of the sword better than anyone he's ever met. It's a bitter pill to swallow, considering how much he used to despise the boy. Admitting defeat, the Grand Master tells Mumyeong that he won the bet. He's ready to grant him any wish he wants as a reward for proving his worth on the training grounds. Mumyeong immediately asks for entry into the Heavenly Dragon Library, but the old man has to shut that down fast. Apparently, even his authority has limits when it comes to the clan's secrets. Our boy takes a moment to think of a backup plan. He needs a way to keep growing stronger within the family's rules, and he's searching for the perfect opportunity to exploit. Then it hits him. He asks for the right to spar with one person from the clan every single day. It's a bold request that would put him constantly in the thick of battle. Cheon is stunned by the simple request. He thought this brat would ask for gold, but Mumyeong's only focus is training. This kid is definitely not the same person anymore. Our boy just smirks, doubling down on his choice. He knows real combat is the fastest way to get strong, and he's ready to start his climb right this second. Cheon remains silent, his expression unreadable after hearing his nephew's bold ambition. He can't help but feel a strange mix of suspicion and genuine curiosity about the boy's sudden change. The Grand Master turns to leave, his thoughts still racing. He vows to get stronger every day, realizing that if his nephew is evolving, he certainly can't afford to fall behind. Mumyeong watches him go, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. He's counting on the old man's competitive nature to keep things interesting as he continues his journey of self-improvement. As the sun sets on the training grounds, the two men go their separate ways. The tension from their meeting lingers, signaling a shift in the clan's dynamic that no one expected. Walking back, Mumyeong asks what the sky meant in his conversation with the Grand Master. Mumyeong just smiles, saying it's a secret between masters that only they would truly understand. The next day arrives with a crisp, clear light over the Cheon estate. It's the start of his new training regime, but not everyone in the clan is happy about the change. Heavy footsteps stomp across the training grounds, kicking up dust and showing clear frustration. Someone is definitely not a fan of the new, one spar per day, rule our boy requested. This guy grumbles about Mumyeong getting cocky just because he got lucky once. He's clearly holding a grudge, and he's not the only one among the trainees feeling this way today. He stops in his tracks, a dark thought crossing his mind. Instead of just being annoyed, he realizes this new rule actually gives him the perfect excuse to settle an old score. A firm grip tightens around a sword hilt as the man prepares for battle. He's ready to prove that the scoundrel is still the same useless trash he's always been before. He draws his blade with a cold, metallic ring that echoes through the courtyard. This isn't just a friendly spar. This man is carrying years of built-up resentment into the arena. The sword's reflection reveals a face marked by a jagged, unerasable scar. It's a permanent reminder of a dark moment from the past that he's never been able to truly forgive. The scene shifts back to a chaotic night at a local tavern years ago. The original Mumyeong was on a drunken rampage, shouting about his status and demanding respect from everyone. This psycho was shirtless and brandishing a sword, completely lost to his own arrogance. He looked like a monster as he terrified the innocent patrons who just wanted a quiet drink. People whispered in fear, trying to hide their faces from the scoundrel's wrath. They knew any wrong move could result in a disaster, and everyone was praying for the nightmare to end. One young man looked ready to intervene, but his friends held him back. They knew better than to challenge the young master, even when he was clearly out of his mind. Blinded by rage and alcohol, Mu-ryang swung his blade wildly, shouting that he wouldn't be treated like a joke. He didn't care who got hurt as long as he felt powerful. A man stood frozen in terror as the blade came crashing toward him. He had no way to defend himself against the unprovoked attack from the most powerful family in the region. A flash of silver light cut through the air as the strike landed with brutal precision. In an instant, a life was changed forever by a single moment of senseless, drunken violence. Blood splattered as the sword tore through flesh, leaving a deep wound across the man's face. The screams of the crowd were drowned out by the sound of the scoundrel's laughter. Red droplets pooled on the tavern floor, a chilling testament to the tragedy that had just occurred. The room went dead silent as the full weight of the incident finally settled. The injured man clutched his face, his eyes wide with shock and agony. He knew in that moment that his face would never be the same, and his heart filled with hate. The injured man clutched his face, his eyes wide with shock and agony. He knew in that moment that his face would never be the same, and his heart filled with hate. Our boy just turned around and walked away, continuing his drunken night like it was nothing. He had no idea the mess he left behind was about to catch up to him. Back in the present, Cha Myung-hak stares into his blade, his face tight with anger. He's finally got the scoundrel right where he wants him, and he's ready to settle the score. Cha Myung-hak glares with pure malice, vowing to leave the exact same wound on his opponent's face. Our boy's first sparring partner is clearly looking for blood, not just a friendly match. Cheon Mu-ryang leapt into the air, his blade catching the sunlight. He was repeating a single, basic motion over and over again with absolute, terrifying focus. He looked like a different man. Midair, his form was perfectly balanced. Our boy wasn't just playing around. He was drilling the fundamentals into his very bones, oblivious to everything else while the sun shone down on him. With a sharp whistle of wind, his sword cut downward. The movement was clean and efficient, showing a level of discipline that was completely alien to his former, lazy self from before. From the entrance, a hulking figure watched in silence. Cha Myung-hak stood there, his presence heavy as he observed the young master he once despised for his arrogance and lack of skill. This was Cha Myung-hak, a bulky warrior with a jagged scar stretching across his cheek. He was fuming with rage, his jaw tight as he stared at the young lord training today. Nearby, tea was being poured into a delicate cup. A maid prepared refreshments, her calm demeanor a sharp contrast to the murderous aura radiating from the scarred warrior standing beside her now. Cha Myung-hak blinked in confusion. He had come for a death match, but Mu-ryang didn't even acknowledge his presence, staying completely locked into his repetitive and strangely hypnotic training routine without stopping. Hwa-young stepped forward with a tray, her yellow and purple robes fluttering. She gently explained that once the young lord starts training, the rest of the world simply ceases to exist for him. The scarred warrior grunted, his gaze fixed on the girl. He asked if she was the one who stood up to Nung Rai-woon, clearly surprised by her quiet and unexpected bravery today. Our girl didn't back down, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze. She wasn't the fragile servant anymore, especially not when it came to defending her master's new and much improved path forward. Cha Myung-hak narrowed his eyes, searching for any hint of deception. He couldn't understand why someone would be so loyal to a man who had previously been nothing but trouble for everyone. Hwa-young's expression remained soft but firm. She had seen the change firsthand, and her faith in Mu-ryang's transformation was now unshakable, regardless of what the rest of the clan might think. The two stood together, watching the relentless training continue. Myung-hak asked if the young lord really did this every single day, his skepticism finally starting to waver as he watched the boy. She confirmed that he hadn't missed a single day since his recovery. While she was happy about his diligence, she couldn't help but worry he was pushing himself way too hard lately. The warrior scoffed, reminding her that Mu-ryang used to be a notorious bully. He struggled to reconcile the monster he remembered with the dedicated and focused martial artist practicing right before him. Mumyeong took a sip of tea, her voice steady. She admitted he made many mistakes in the past, but the current young lord was now desperately trying to correct his previous behavior. Looking back at the training ground, she whispered that she truly believed in his heart. Her words hung in the air, forcing Myeonghak to reconsider his own vengeful motives for being there. Myeonghak took a long, thoughtful drink, his eyes never leaving the field. He couldn't deny it. There was something fundamentally different about the young lord's energy and his incredible focus during training recently. He watched Mumyeong repeat that same jump-and-slash motion for the 100th time. On the surface, it looked like a simple warm-up, but something about the rhythm felt strangely heavy and quite intentional. He leaned in closer, his eyes widening as he scrutinized every tiny detail. His warrior instincts were screaming at him that he was witnessing something far beyond basic training or simple physical exercise. He focused on the stepping foot. The way Mumyeong landed was identical every single time, his heel hitting the ground at the exact same angle without even a hair's breadth of deviation. Next, he watched the sword's arc. The height it reached and the way Mumyeong gripped the hilt never changed, showing a level of muscular control that was frankly impossible for most people. Myeonghak broke into a cold sweat. It wasn't just similar, it was a perfect loop. He couldn't fathom how the trash of the family could achieve such flawless, machine-like consistency with every strike. Following the blade's path, Myeonghak finally saw the truth. Every strike targeted a single, invisible point in the air, almost like Mumyeong was trying to slice through space itself. His legs nearly gave out as reality hit him. There was no point in fighting, the gap between them was a total abyss. This duel was over before it even began. Myeonghak was completely paralyzed by the sight. He couldn't believe his eyes. Was Cheon Mu-ryang actually simulating a full-blown battle against him while just doing a basic training routine? Up close, Myeonghak's face was a mask of pure terror. The scar across his cheek throbbed as he watched the young master he once despised display a level of focus and skill. He broke into a cold sweat, realizing the massive gap between them. It felt like the very air was pressing down on him, suffocating his will to even draw his sword. His internal monologue was racing with disbelief. He felt like Mumyeong had already won the fight before it even started, simply by aiming that overwhelming pressure directly at his soul. Suddenly, Mumyeong stopped and turned, surprising the warrior. He apologized for making Myeonghak wait, his voice calm and polite, which only confused the aggressive challenger even more than before. Standing tall with his sword at his side, Mumyeong greeted him with a friendly smile. He actually knew Myeonghak's name, treating him with a level of respect the old scoundrel never would. Myeonghak was stunned, his anger replaced by confusion. He couldn't wrap his head around how this guy even knew his name, given their history and the young master's previous trashy personality. Mumyeong smiled, mentioning that Myeonghak would become a great martial artist for the clan someday. He explained he was trying to memorize everyone's names, showing a completely new, humble side. The warrior just stared, unable to process the words. The idea of the eldest young lord caring enough to learn the names of all the trainees was absolutely mind-blowing to him. Mumyeong's gaze shifted to the prominent scar on Myeonghak's cheek. He realized it wasn't a normal wound, and asked if he was the one who had inflicted such a terrible injury. Myeonghak gritted his teeth, his expression hardening as he confirmed the truth. That scar was a permanent reminder of the young master's past cruelty and the pain he had caused others. Mumyeong looked away, reflecting on the murderous glares he had received. He realized he didn't remember the incident because it was something the original, heartless version of himself had done. Without hesitation, the young master began to lower his head. He wasn't looking for a fight anymore. Instead, he was preparing to do something truly unthinkable for a noble of his rank. Mumyeong bowed deeply, offering a sincere apology for the unerasable wound caused by his foolish past mistakes. He humbly asked for forgiveness, showing a level of remorse that shocked everyone present. It was a sight nobody expected to see. The high-end mighty scoundrel of the Cheon family was bowing his head in genuine shame before a common trainee, with Myeonghak watching in silent awe. Myeonghak was in total disbelief. His mind flashed back to the arrogant, laughing monster who used to blame everyone else for his own failures, making this humble apology feel almost surreal. He struggled to connect this polite young man with the nightmare from his past. He wondered if the maid was actually telling the truth about her master's sudden and drastic change. The heavy atmosphere shifted as Mumyeong slowly lowered his hand onto the serving tray. He took a deep breath and admitted the truth out loud. He had already lost this battle. Without even trading a single blow, the warrior turned to leave. Mu-ryang looked surprised as Mumyeong announced his defeat, acknowledging that he wasn't ready to face the current version of him. Before leaving, Mumyeong looked back with a newfound sense of respect. He promised to prepare properly and challenge the young master again in the future, no longer fueled by blind hatred. The warrior walked away with his head held high, leaving Mu-ryang and Hwalyong standing there in confusion. The tension had vanished, replaced by a strange sense of mutual understanding and respect. Mu-ryang watched him go, a faint smile playing on his lips. His eyes sparkled with curiosity as he wondered whether the warrior had truly accepted his apology. Hwalyong gave a small smile, looking visibly relieved. She noted that while Mumyeong didn't crack a smile, his actions proved he had truly accepted the young master's heartfelt and sincere apology. Mu-ryang turned back to Hwalyong, looking more serious than ever. He had a specific request for her, something that would help him finally clear his conscience and move forward. He told her to write down a complete list of all his past crimes. Our boy was done running from the truth and wanted to face his mistakes head-on. Cheon Mu-ryang looked at his maid, Hwalyong, and told her to write down any suffering she ever faced because of him. He was truly serious about fixing his past mistakes. This guy realized that correcting his past behavior was just the starting point. It was a heavy burden he had to shoulder now that he was living as Mu-ryang. From the very next day, the young master began a rigorous sparring schedule. He was determined to regain his skills and show everyone that the old scoundrel was finally gone. One by one, the clan trainees stepped up to challenge him. This guy lunged forward, shouting that everything was just karma for the young lord's previous outrageous behavior in the past. Mu-ryang didn't even break a sweat, dodging the attack with grace. He moved like the wind, effortlessly countering every strike with his wooden sword while his opponent struggled to keep up. The trainee's strike didn't even come close as Mu-ryang delivered a swift and decisive blow. A bright flash signaled the end of the match as the challenger was completely overwhelmed. It was over in an instant. The trainee collapsed to the ground, his sword clattering beside him. He could only stare up in shock at the incredible transformation of the young master. Mu-ryang stood over him, calm and composed. He thanked the guy for the match and encouraged him to compete again when they both had another chance, showing unexpected sportsmanship and humility. The news spread quickly through the clan. Most challengers were being defeated in just one strike, and it seemed like no one could actually beat the newly improved Cheon Mu-ryang. Hwalyong stood by with snacks, watching as another trainee grumbled about his defeat. He claimed he only lost because he let his guard down, but the maid knew the truth. Our girl was having a bit of fun with it, sticking her tongue out playfully. She was busy marking down every single victory on a wooden board to keep score. The defeated trainee could only sigh in frustration. He tried to convince himself it was just a fluke, but the look on Mu-ryang's face told a completely different story of strength. He thought back to the old Mu-ryang, that bloated, aggressive scoundrel who did nothing but bully others. It's insane how he's become a completely different person now, effortlessly crushing disciples of his own level like they're nothing. The trainee walked away, still muttering under his breath about the unfairness of it all. Meanwhile, Mu-ryang prepared for his next session, his focus entirely on his own internal growth. The wooden board was filled with win tallies, proving his undefeated streak. He hadn't lost a single match since he started this daily challenge, and the clan was starting to notice. Later that evening, everything was quiet at the young master's quarters. He had retreated to his room to focus on his internal cultivation, away from the prying eyes of the clan. Mu-ryang sat in deep meditation, a powerful aura swirling around his body. He was pushing his limits, trying to reach the next level of the Divine Sun heavenly art. He realized he had reached the 7th star, but he hit a wall. The cold yin energy from years of elixir abuse was blocking his vessels and hindering his chi flow. Sweat poured down his face as he realized the danger. If he tried to force the energy to circulate, his meridians might actually burst, leading to a very dangerous chi deviation. He stared ahead, realizing the limit of his current martial art. To progress any further, he would definitely need to enter the Heavenly Dragon Library and learn a higher-level cultivation method. Suddenly, our boy froze while sitting on his bed. He got this uneasy feeling in his gut, like he was forgetting something really important that he should have remembered earlier today. His eyes widened in shock as it finally hit him. He shouted out loud, realizing that this was absolutely not the time to be sitting around and just doing internal cultivation. He jumped up in a panic, realizing the family head was returning today. He had to hurry and prepare himself to meet his father for the very first time in person. Our boy thought back to the benefactor who saved him when he was at rock bottom. He hurried through the corridors, clearly eager to show his face to the family head. After changing into some high-quality robes and grabbing his sword, he finally looked like a proper young lord. He stood tall, ready to go and face the big boss at last. Cheon Mu-ryang reflects on the impending arrival of the family head. He wonders if he should address him as father, recalling a time he briefly dreamed of such a relationship in his past. Suddenly, a panicked voice calls out to him. Mu-ryang looks up as another maid rushes into his room, her expression filled with urgency and fear about a brewing situation involving his loyal servant. He recognizes her as Hwa-hung, a close friend of Wal-yong. She gasps out that there is big trouble, and something terrible is happening to Wal-yong right at this very moment in the courtyard. Hwa-hung is in tears, her face flushed with anxiety. She reveals that Wal-yong has encountered the person known as the eldest young lord's fiancé, and things have gone horribly wrong between them. Mu-ryang is completely shocked by the news. He can't believe that his fiancée, a woman he hasn't even met yet in this life, is already causing serious problems for his innocent maid. The scene shifts to the source of the conflict. A plate of braised pork has been dropped, scattering meat and sauce all over the clean, polished floor of the inner family courtyard. Poor Wal-yong is on her knees, trembling with fear. She looks absolutely terrified as she stares at the mess, knowing she has made a grave mistake in front of someone incredibly powerful. She frantically apologizes, bowing her head in shame. Standing before her is Cheon Mu-ryang's fiancé, whose white robes have been stained by the food, surrounded by several of her stern-looking personal guards. The fiancé looks down with a cold, piercing gaze. She is a striking woman with blue eyes and elaborate silver headgear, but her beauty is masked by an aura of pure arrogance. Meanwhile, in the clan's kitchen, the staff is working at a frantic pace. A steaming plate of fried rice is being prepared, with green onions being sprinkled on top for extra flavor. The head cook is sweating profusely as he pushes himself to the limit. He is determined to finish the cooking on time, knowing the consequences if the meal isn't absolutely perfect. The head cook calls out to Mumyeong while a skilled chef slices vegetables with intense focus. The cook mutters a creepy laugh, seemingly satisfied with how things are progressing in the kitchen. The Sichuan Tang clan arrived at the estate, and they weren't being subtle about their power. A maid accidentally spilled some food, and things immediately took a very dark turn for her. Wal-yong trembled on the ground, completely paralyzed by fear. She knew these people didn't value the lives of servants, and she was currently at their absolute mercy while they surrounded her. Dang So-hai looked down with cold indifference, claiming a simple apology wouldn't fix her stained dress. To her, this wasn't just about clothes. It was about asserting her total dominance over everyone. Hiding her face behind an ornate fan, this girl coldly ordered her men to handle the situation according to their laws. She wanted the poor maid executed right there in the open courtyard. Her guards didn't hesitate for a second, nodding in agreement with the brutal command. They lived to serve her every whim, no matter how cruel or bloodthirsty the order actually was. One of the Tang clan warriors slowly drew his blade, the cold steel gleaming under the sun. He stood over the defenseless girl, ready to end her life without any visible remorse. He raised his sword high, casting a long shadow over the sobbing Wal-yong. The atmosphere was heavy with impending death as everyone watched, too afraid to speak up or even interfere. Suddenly, a desperate cry rang out through the courtyard as someone tried to stop the madness. But the guard didn't even flinch, his focus entirely on completing the execution as ordered. The warrior swung his blade down with full force, aiming to kill in one strike. It looked like Mumyeong's fate was sealed until a sudden blur moved into the frame. In a flash, Cheon Mu-ryang appeared and intercepted the blow with incredible precision. His blade sparked against the guard's sword, stopping the lethal strike just inches from the girl's neck. The guard froze in total shock, unable to believe someone actually dared to interfere. Even Dang So-hai lowered her fan, her calm expression cracking as she realized who exactly stood there. This guy didn't look like the coward everyone remembered from the rumors. His gaze was sharp and determined, radiating a pressure that made the seasoned warriors hesitate to move any further. The force of the clash sent a shockwave through the area as Mumyeong pushed back. He wasn't just defending, he was making it clear that he was in total control now. Mumyeong stood protectively over the terrified Mumyeong, his voice dripping with authority. He demanded to know what these outsiders thought they were doing on his clan's private territory. The Tang clan guards glared at him, their faces twisted with pure arrogance. They demanded to know his identity, clearly offended that anyone would dare challenge the business of their clan. Our boy didn't flinch, calmly declaring himself as the first son of the Cheon clan. He wasn't hiding anymore, and his presence alone was enough to shift the entire power dynamic. Sensing the shift, Dang So-hai stepped forward with a fake smile, trying to smooth things over. She apologized for the rough introduction, acting as if she hadn't just ordered a murder. This girl introduced herself with a graceful bow, revealing she was from the prestigious Sichuan Tang clan. She acted perfectly refined, but her eyes remained cold and calculating as ever. Mumyeong stared at her, his mind racing as he recognized that face from his memories. In his past life, this woman had been his wife and the one who ruined everything. She was known as the Ice Flower, a title that perfectly suited her beautiful yet deadly nature. He knew exactly how dangerous she was beneath that mask of a perfect lady. The text explains how the head of the Cheon clan had once proposed a marriage alliance. It was a strategic move aimed at strengthening the ties between these two powerful families. The Tang clan were masters of poisons, making them a perfect match on paper. The family head believed they could fix Mumyeong's weak body using their secret and legendary healing techniques. Turns out the Tang clan readily accepted because they had their own hidden agenda. They wanted to use the marriage as a way to expand their influence into the Central Plains. In his past life, Mumyeong was a total mess who just drank and threw his life away. Dang So-hai didn't mind, though she was just playing the long game to ruin them. After the wedding, the family head went soft and started trusting the Dang clan way too much. He was totally played, and that gave them the perfect excuse to step in and help. The Dang clan once claimed they were helping the Cheon family, using their famous acupuncture to heal the original Mumyeong. In reality, it was all a scheme to use them as stepping stones. This guy's marriage to Dang So-hai was the catalyst for his clan's ultimate downfall. It was a poison hidden behind a veil of gold and prestige, designed to destroy them from within. Back in the present, Mumyeong faced the Tang clan delegation in the courtyard. Among them stood Dang So-hai, hiding her true nature behind an elegant fan while her guards loomed nearby. Our boy didn't waste any time, demanding to know what they thought they were doing on his property. His tone was cold, matching the intensity of the situation as he stood his ground. Dang So-hai merely glanced down at the food stains ruining her expensive white dress. She didn't give a damn about the violence she'd just unleashed. It was as if a soiled garment was the only tragedy worth noting here. Poor Mumyeong was trembling on the floor, surrounded by spilled food and broken plates. So-hai casually explained she was just punishing a lowly servant for ruining her day and her clothes. Mumyeong couldn't believe his ears, questioning why she'd try to execute a maid for such a pathetic reason. He wasn't about to let their laws override the rules of his own household. This girl just smirked behind her fan, mocking him for having eyes only for a servant girl. She clearly had no respect for the value of life compared to her precious garments. She coldly claimed the Dang clan had its own laws, and this punishment was perfectly valid under their jurisdiction. It was a blatant attempt to assert dominance within the Cheon clan's walls. Our boy snapped, telling her to cut the crap. He made it crystal clear that in the Cheon clan they follow their own rules, and the Tang clan's authority ended at the gate. He stood protectively in front of Mumyeong, declaring that her actions were an insult to his entire clan and his people. He wasn't the trash she expected, and he was ready to fight. Dang So-hai didn't back down, surrounding herself with her loyal guards. She argued that their laws shouldn't lose authority just because they crossed onto someone else's territory, maintaining her icy, arrogant stance. Biting her lip with a chilling grin, she challenged him to try and stop them. She was testing his resolve, daring him to trigger a massive political incident right then and there. One of her elite warriors didn't wait for another word, drawing his sword with a menacing purple aura. This guy was clearly a master, and he was ready to cut Mu-ryang down. Mu-ryang's eyes widened as he sensed the sheer power of the man's sword chi. He realized this wouldn't be a simple brawl. He was up against a first-class warrior with lethal intent. Blades clashed with a deafening ring as Mumyeong intercepted the guard's strike. The impact was massive, sending sparks flying as the two warriors locked eyes and weapons in a desperate struggle. Gritting his teeth, our boy felt the immense pressure of the guard's physical strength. He was being pushed back, but he refused to yield, focusing all his energy into holding his position. The courtyard became a battlefield as the two exchanged rapid blows. The other Tang clan members watched coldly from the side, waiting to see if this trash would actually survive the encounter. Mumyeong cried out for her young master, her heart racing with pure terror. Caught in a conflict far beyond her understanding, all she could do was pray that he would make it out alive. Meanwhile, Dang So-hai watched the duel with a calculating gaze, her fan partially covering her face. She was analyzing Mumyeong's every move, looking for any sign of his potential. While the swords clashed, she subtly prepared a thin silver needle between her fingers. This was her signature move, a hidden poison designed to end the fight before it even truly began. The guard swung his blade with renewed fury, his purple aura surging like a tidal wave. He wanted to finish this quickly, swinging with enough force to cleave a man in half. Mumyeong dodged and parried with lightning speed, the air around them vibrating from the intensity of the fight. He was barely holding on, his movements becoming more refined every second. Mumyeong was genuinely overwhelmed, realizing this guard was far stronger than his rank suggested. The man could already manifest sword chi, transforming him into a legitimate first-class threat in this duel. A massive explosion rocked the entire area as their techniques collided. Mumyeong felt himself starting to get overwhelmed by the sheer force of the impact. Cheon Mu-ryang staggered back, his footwork barely holding firm. Meanwhile, the Tang clan warrior stood calm and steady, looking as if he hadn't even unleashed his full strength yet. Stomping his foot down, Mumyeong channeled his energy into a single point. He was setting up for a high-level technique, deciding it was finally time to show these outsiders some real power. A blade of mystical arts flashed as he executed a swift strike. The air around him seemed to vibrate with intense energy, signaling that this wasn't just some ordinary martial arts move. Mumyeong moved like a ghost, closing the distance in a split second before leaping into the air. He was about to unleash his trump card, the very same technique he used to effortlessly crush his fellow disciples. He showcased the sword of subtle arts, a technique focused on finesse rather than brute force. Mumyeong's blade glided through the air, targeting the weak points in the guard's defensive stance. Instead of aiming for the man, Mumyeong aimed directly for his weapon. He knew that disarming a master was far more effective than trying to land a direct blow during this duel. The moment the guard's sword entered his range, Mumyeong snatched it like a predator barring its claws. Here, the secret behind this technique is finally revealed. It starts as a feint to trick the opponent into parrying, then transitions into a variation that uses the enemy's own momentum to disarm them. Everything went exactly as Mumyeong planned. He successfully pulled off the variation, catching the Tang clan guard completely off guard. Sparks flew in every direction as the sheer impact of the technique sent massive shockwaves through the guard's arm and his entire body. A blinding light erupted as the two techniques clashed with full force. It was a display of sheer power that left the surrounding environment reeling from the intensity of their battle. The battle was finally settled as a sword slammed into the ground, carving out a deep crater and sending debris flying everywhere. The Tang clan guard stared at Mumyeong's empty hands in utter shock, paralyzed by the mystery of that technique. Meanwhile, Mumyeong gritted his teeth, realizing with horror that he had been disarmed. He had executed every move perfectly, yet his blade was gone, leaving him reeling from the brutal tension of the exchange. Mumyeong's sword clattered onto the stone floor, shattering the silence. He stood there in a daze, unable to wrap his head around how things had ended up this way. The guard looked down in disgust, mocking Mumyeong's lack of strength. He insulted his lineage, claiming he expected a dragon, but only found a pathetic shrimp from a supposedly elite clan. Gritting his teeth as the harsh reality set in, Mumyeong realized the gap in internal energy between him and his opponent was still far too wide. He now knew that the dragon claw hand wouldn't always be effective, especially against a powerhouse like this. Dang So-hai stepped in to stop the fight, acting surprised that her fiancé cared so much for a lowly maid. She claimed she was glad she came to see his progress. She coldly invited him to the banquet tonight, hoping he would be a bit more gentle then. Mumyeong glared at her, sensing the hidden venom behind her polite and refined facade. The moment So-hai turned to leave, another maid cried out in a panic. Mumyeong had suddenly collapsed on the floor, her face pale and her body trembling with an unknown ailment. Mumyeong's eyes widened in horror as he looked at his unconscious maid. He realized something was terribly wrong, and the timing of her collapse was way too suspicious to be accidental. He rushed toward Mumyeong, calling her name while the Tang clan delegation watched with cold indifference. So-hai hid her face behind her fan, her eyes showing no remorse for the tragedy. So-hai's inner monologue revealed her calculation. Mumyeong's condition was different from the rumors. She feared that if her father knew, he never would have proposed this marriage in the first place. The girl realized this could ruin all her family's plans, so she decided she must make this marriage an absolute certainty. She was determined to eliminate any obstacles standing in her way. The defeated guard reported that Mumyeong was actually weak, despite his decent swordsmanship. He claimed his internal energy was lacking and that just 2 of his men could easily handle him. Hearing this assessment, So-hai ordered her men to move 4 warriors instead of 2. She wanted to ensure that the first son would be unable to show his face at tonight's banquet. Mumyeong tried to shake Mumyeong awake, but she wouldn't budge. Seeing her look so pale made his blood boil, especially since he knew this had to be a targeted attack. He checked her pulse and realized she'd been poisoned. With her skin already turning gray, our boy was certain that the ice flower was the one behind this dirty move. Mumyeong looked down at the spilled food, his eyes burning with a cold, righteous fury. He knew this wasn't just a simple accident. It was a calculated strike against his people. He remembered Mumyeong's cheerful face from just moments before, how she had been so excited to bring him dinner. That brightness had been extinguished in an instant by a coward's poison. She had even teased him about the meal, promising there wouldn't be any mushrooms this time. Now, that simple, happy memory felt like a knife twisting in his very soul. Gritting his teeth until they nearly cracked, Mumyeong struggled to contain the murderous intent swirling within him. He wouldn't let those responsible get away with this cruelty. Without a second's hesitation, he scooped the unconscious girl into his arms and prepared to rush for help. He cursed his own lack of foresight for allowing this to happen. As he sprinted away, he barked an order for a nearby servant to look after his discarded weapon. He had more pressing matters than a piece of steel right now. The door to the clan's medical wing swung open, and a disciple gasped in horror at the scene inside. He couldn't fathom what had driven the young master to such a desperate act. Terrified, he began to weigh his options. Should he report this incident to Nung Ryo-woon or keep it a secret? Inside the Cheon clan medical room, the air was heavy. Rows of medicine jars lined the walls, but the situation looked grim for the poor girl caught in the crossfire. The doctor delivered the news to Cheon Mu-ryang. They'd provided some emergency treatment, but it was clear that simple medicine wouldn't be enough to save Mumyeong from this state. This wasn't an accident. The doctor pulled out a tiny needle, confirming Mumyeong's worst fears. It was the Dang clan's signature poison, a lethal toxin designed to kill without a trace. Mumyeong lay pale and sweating, the poison already ravaging her body. Without the specific antidote from the Dang clan themselves, there was absolutely no way to save her life. It was over. Mumyeong stood in silence, his eyes darkening with a cold, righteous fury. The girl had done nothing wrong, yet his so-called fiancé had marked her for death just to make a point. Our boy didn't waste another second. He told Hwa Hong to look after the sick girl, then turned to leave. The time for talking was done. It was time to get some answers. Hwa Hong called out, worried about where he was going with that sword in his hand. Mumyeong didn't look back. He had a destination in mind and a debt to settle tonight. He remembered the banquet for the family head happening later. Missing his own father's celebration would be a scandal, but Mumyeong had a very different kind of appearance planned for the guests. Mumyeong gritted his teeth, his face contorted in pure rage. If they wanted a piece of trash, he'd show them exactly how dangerous a cornered man could be. They wouldn't forget him. Meanwhile, Cheon Mu-ryang walked through the clan halls. The powerful uncle looked deep in thought, clearly bothered by the sudden arrival of the Dang clan and the tension in the air. He muttered to himself, wondering what his brother was thinking. Bringing that clan into their home was like inviting a tiger inside. Eventually, they'd try to swallow the Cheon clan whole. Suddenly, Mu-ryang's sharp eyes narrowed. He was a seasoned warrior, and something in the atmosphere had shifted. A vibe so thick and heavy it was impossible for a master like him to miss. The old man stopped dead in his tracks. He turned toward the training grounds, sensing a presence that shouldn't be there. It wasn't just strength, it was a deep, overwhelming, murderous intent. He realized the aura was coming from his nephew. Mu-ryang couldn't believe his senses. That kind of pressure shouldn't be coming from the boy everyone called a useless piece of trash. Over at the training clearing, the birds were panicking. They scattered into the sky as a wave of raw energy surged through the trees, signaling that something wild was happening below. Feathers drifted through the air like snow after a massive impact. The forest was silent for a split second before the sounds of steel cutting through wood erupted once again. It was brutal. There was Mumyeong, his movements a blur of speed and precision. He wasn't just practicing forms anymore. He was venting every bit of his frustration and anger into his sword. The trees didn't stand a chance. With every swing, massive trunks were sliced and shredded as if they were made of paper. Mumyeong was pushing his body to the absolute limit. Mu-ryang watched from the shadows, completely stunned. He saw his nephew execute a strike so powerful it sent wood chips flying everywhere. This wasn't the boy he used to know. The uncle stood there with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He was analyzing every move, trying to understand where this sudden, terrifying surge of martial prowess had come from. He recognized the stance immediately. It wasn't the sky-severing sword their clan usually taught to reach for the heavens. This was something much darker and far more direct than that. This was a manslaying blade. It was a style built for one purpose, killing. Mu-ryang could feel the raw anger and murderous intent radiating off Mumyeong with every single breath he took. The old master looked genuinely concerned. At this rate, he feared Mumyeong would be consumed by his own rage. A warrior driven only by hate was a danger to everyone around them. Mumyeong let out a huge roar, eyes wide with focus. He raised his sword high, putting every bit of his pain into one last, heavy swing to clear his head. The blade slammed down with a deafening crash, hitting the massive tree with absolute power. This guy was finally done with his training, but he still looked completely on edge. The tree split right down the middle, wood shards flying everywhere. Mumyeong's strike was pure destruction, but it wasn't enough to calm the storm raging inside his heart. He bent over, huffing and puffing while sweat dripped from his face. This training was brutal, but the thought of failing his people again was even more exhausting for him. Suddenly, his uncle Mu-ryang walked up. He mocked our boy, pointing out that he claimed to want to cut the heavens but was currently just taking his anger out on trees. The old man stood there with his arms crossed, looking as stern as ever. He demanded to know what exactly had Mumyeong so infuriated that he'd wrecked the forest like this. Mumyeong didn't make any excuses. He just stood there with his back to his uncle and admitted the one truth he couldn't escape anymore. He was simply just too weak. Because he's weak, he keeps failing to protect the people around him. If he ever wants to keep them safe, he knows he has to become someone much stronger than this. Mumyeong looked genuinely surprised by those words. He repeated the phrase, "your people," wondering who exactly this supposed scoundrel considered worthy of his protection and his care. Without any hesitation, Mumyeong gripped his sword. He declared that his people were the ones he wanted to cherish more than anything else. the entire legendary Cheon clan. The old master stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. He'd spent years seeing his nephew as a hopeless case, but this level of resolve was something he never expected. He finally understood the truth. Mu-ryang wasn't talking about servants or followers. He was talking about the people he truly wanted to serve and protect with his own life. Mumyeong realized he'd been way too narrow-minded about his nephew. He let out a small grin. Turns out there was a real warrior hidden under that trashy reputation after all. Fine, he reminded Mu-ryang about how he copied the dragon's claw just by seeing it once. If the boy was truly a genius, the uncle had one final challenge for him. He drew his sword, the air around him starting to crackle with energy. He asked if Mumyeong was ready to prove those bold words and copy a legendary technique right now. Mumyeong didn't say a word. He just stared at his uncle, his gaze sharpening into a blade. He knew this was the one moment that would define his entire future. Mumyeong explained that he'd created a follow-up to the dragon's claw. It was a move so dangerous and lethal that he'd never taught it to a single soul before. It sat right on the edge of the forbidden, manslaying arts. The old man's face lit up with an intense, purple aura as he asked if Mumyeong wanted to learn it. This was the final form of the heavenly dragon sword. He warned that this move showed the world exactly what happens when you dare to touch the dragon's reverse scale. The air exploded with pink energy as Mumyeong charged forward. His power was spiraling out of control as he prepared to unleash the terrifying power of the dragon's wrath. Mumyeong stood there, completely stunned by the display. He never seen power like this before, and the sheer force of the move was enough to make his hair stand up. "The reverse scale slash!" Mumyeong roared, swinging his blade with everything he had. The ground shook and the sky seemed to scream as the ultimate technique was finally unleashed. A massive, swirling vortex of wind and energy shot into the sky. It was like a hurricane had been born in the forest, destroying everything in its path with ease. Nearby, a group of trainees nearly jumped out of their skins. They stared at the massive vortex in the distance, wondering what kind of monster was causing such insane destruction. One of the guys told the others to focus. They didn't have time to gawk at the weather. They had to finish their sketchy mission before the banquet actually started. He pulled out a vial of nasty poison, grinning. This stuff would make Mumyeong look totally wasted, trashing his reputation right during the most important ceremony of the year. These rats moved through the woods, confident their plan was foolproof. They were sure the family trash wouldn't see them coming, unaware that Mumyeong was currently occupied with some intense training. Mumyeong stood there in silence, his clothes torn and his body covered in sweat. The sheer power of his uncle's demonstration had left him completely breathless and deep in thought. He looked up at the looming figure of his uncle, wondering if the old man was actually trying to kill him. Mumyeong's aura was still heavy, even after the move. Our boy looked around at the absolute carnage in the forest. Trees were snapped like toothpicks, proving that the reverse scale slash was on a totally different level of destruction. Mumyeong stood tall, asking if his nephew finally understood the difference. The dragon's claw was just the beginning. This new technique was the true peak of their clan's martial arts. The old man explained the core concept of their style. When a true swordsman reaches a certain level, the blade isn't just a tool. It feels like a natural extension of themselves. This identification of sword and body is exactly what the dragon's claw exploits. Most warriors fall for the illusion, thinking they are one with their weapon until it's too late. But in that moment of overconfidence, the sword can be ripped away. A master can force the weapon to leave the body, leaving the opponent completely defenseless against a killing blow. Mumyeong admitted that even the dragon's claw has its limits. Against a true master who sees through the trick, it won't work, which is why the second form is necessary. A chill ran down Mumyeong's spine as the memory of his defeat flashed before his eyes. He had learned a bitter lesson about what happens when you face an opponent who is on an entirely different level. Mumyeong's eyes sparkled with intensity as he continued his lesson. He told Mumyeong that there's an even deeper illusion that even the greatest masters on earth will fall for. The old master leaned in, his expression dead serious. He challenged our boy to guess what that ultimate secret could be, testing his intuition and his understanding of the blade. Mumyeong's eyes widened as the realization hit him like a lightning bolt. He finally saw it, the heaven that sat at the very heart of the reverse scale slash technique. Mumyeong didn't waste any time with praise. He just looked at his nephew and asked the only question that mattered. Could he actually pull off a move of that caliber? Mumyeong looked back at the ruined remains of the forest. Being honest with himself, he admitted that reaching such a level of mastery instantly was practically impossible for anyone. But his gaze never wavered as he looked back at his uncle. He made a bold vow right then and there to master the technique before the banquet even started. Mumyeong didn't care about the technique anymore. He looked Mumyeong in the eye and asked if the boy could truly fulfill his promise and protect the entire Cheon clan. The weight of that question hung in the air, catching Mumyeong off guard. It wasn't just about martial arts, it was about the responsibility he'd finally chosen to carry. A small, confident grin spread across our boy's face. He wasn't the same arrogant piece of trash anymore. He had a new purpose and the drive to see it through. Standing tall with his sword at his side, Mumyeong promised to make it happen. He'd protect his people and his clan, no matter what kind of enemies came their way. Mumyeong gave a satisfied nod, sheathing his own weapon. He was starting to see the true potential hidden within his nephew, and he liked what he saw so far. The old man mentioned the sketchy rats hiding nearby before heading off to the banquet hall. He left the cleanup to Mumyeong, trusting him to handle the uninvited guests. As his uncle walked away, Mumyeong stayed behind in the clearing. The forest was silent, but he knew he wasn't alone. The hidden enemies were watching his every move. He took a deep breath, his expression shifting from determined to deadly. It was time to stop talking and start acting. The banquet was approaching fast after all. Mumyeong's face twisted into a terrifying scowl as he looked toward the bushes. He was ready to hunt down the rats who thought they could sneak onto his land. He stood in the middle of the path, staring right at the hidden assassins disguised as trainees. These creeps had no idea they were about to become his training dummies. These sketchy guys were lurking in the bushes, planning to poison our boy. They thought they could blend in as clan trainees, but they definitely didn't look the part. Just as they expected, Mumyeong was onto them. The three fake trainees didn't waste any more time and jumped out from the trees, launching a coordinated surprise attack. They tried to play it cool at first, bowing and apologizing for the interruption. The leader claimed they were just trainees looking for a place to practice. Nice try, creeps. Mumyeong wasn't buying any of it. He pointed his sword right at them, calling out their rotten old geezer faces. Clearly, these guys were way too old to be students. Turns out our boy has every trainee's face memorized, and these three definitely weren't on the list. Instead of being worried, he actually seemed thrilled to have new sparring partners. Realizing their cover was totally blown, the lead assassin dropped the act. He ordered his men to subdue the young lord immediately and feed him that paralyzing poison they brought. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the most secluded training ground within the vast residence. While Mumyeong dealt with the rats in the woods, the rest of the clan was busy. The other trainees who had been wrecked by Mumyeong earlier were training like men possessed. His display of power had clearly lit a fire under every single one of them. Mumyeong was pushing himself to the absolute limit, sprinting through the forest. He was determined to get his sword back from the young lord as soon as possible. Even Cha Myung-hak was getting in on the action, pumping iron until his muscles screamed. It seemed like the entire clan was suddenly obsessed with getting stronger for Mumyeong. Suddenly, a random trainee came charging into the area, screaming his head off. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, shouting that there was a massive problem with the young lord. But the others were so deeply immersed in their own training that they barely even noticed him. Everyone was doing their own thing, from handstands to lifting heavy logs. The poor guy was practically begging for someone to pay attention. He finally managed to catch his breath enough to start explaining what had happened with Mumyeong just moments ago. The second he mentioned the young lord, Mumyeong and Cha Myung-hak snapped to attention. Their eyes literally lit up with an intense, almost scary level of focus and curiosity. The messenger was completely weirded out by their reaction. He realized these guys weren't just training, they were totally obsessed with Mumyeong. He just told them to put some clothes on. Back in the quiet forest, the sun filtered through the trees, but the silence didn't last long. A storm was brewing as the hidden assassins prepared to strike again. Sudden crashes and the sound of leaves rustling echoed through the woods. The fight had officially kicked off, and it was clear that things were about to get very messy. Mumyeong didn't hesitate, clashing blades with the lead assassin in a shower of sparks. Despite their age and experience, this guy was holding his own against the trained killers. One of the creeps was already face down in the dirt, while Mumyeong took on the other two. He moved with a grace that left the fake trainees completely wide-eyed. He spun through their attacks like it was nothing, his movements a perfect blur of speed and precision. The assassins realized they had drastically underestimated just how dangerous this guy was. With a sudden, powerful thrust, Mumyeong slammed the hilt of his sword right into the leader's chest. The impact was enough to knock the wind out of the guy instantly. The bearded bastard collapsed onto the forest floor, clutching his chest and gasping for air. He couldn't believe that a piece of trash like Mumyeong could possess such terrifying power. Mumyeong stood there, looking down at him with a completely indifferent expression. Out of nowhere, 3 professional assassins sent to ruin him had turned into nothing more than convenient punching bags for him to vent his frustration. Mumyeong stood tall amidst the 3 assassins he had just served a massive plate of humble pie. One of them tried to scramble to his feet, plotting a quick escape, but his every move was caught by Mumyeong's sharp gaze. Gasping for air, the lead assassin realized the rumors about our boy were total lies. This guy was getting faster mid-fight, making it impossible to keep up with their current gear. The assassin grumbled about his weapon. Being disguised as a Cheon trainee meant he couldn't use his familiar Tang clan sword, and it was seriously messing with his combat rhythm. Sweat poured down the assassin's face as the realization hit him. They had completely underestimated the young lord, thinking he was still the same useless piece of trash from the rumors. Mumyeong stood his ground, looking totally unfazed by the situation. He calmly asked if they were ready to confess their goals, already knowing exactly which clan had sent them there. The intruder gritted his teeth, holding his weapon high. He challenged Mumyeong, claiming that without hard proof, he could never officially link them to the Tang clan's secret operations. Our boy just looked at him with pity. He didn't need a confession to know the truth. After all, the Tang clan was the only family arrogant enough to pull this. The assassin's eyes widened in pure shock. He hadn't expected the young lord to be this sharp, let alone so confident while facing 3 highly trained killers in the woods. Mumyeong grinned, enjoying the man's panic. He didn't need legal proof. If everyone suspected the Tang clan, that was more than enough to ruin the political marriage alliance for good. This guy was absolutely fuming, his teeth bared in a desperate snarl. He mocked Mumyeong for being young and naive, refusing to believe he'd been outsmarted by a mere boy. Our boy wasn't interested in talk anymore. He gripped his sword, feeling a strange surge of confidence. He was ready to test out his new power once and for all. In a flash of movement, Mumyeong launched himself at the assassin. The guy barely had time to raise his own blade as the young lord brought down a devastating overhead strike. He let out a fierce roar, channeling every bit of his training into one final move. This was it, the legendary reverse scale slash his uncle had just shown him. The sheer force of the technique was overwhelming. The assassin struggled with all his might to block the blow, but the raw power behind the slash was simply too much. The impact was so massive it sent a shockwave through the entire forest. Birds scattered into the sky in a panic as the environment itself buckled under the dragon's wrath. As the dust settled, a huge path was carved right through the trees. The sunlight poured through the new gap, illuminating the true scale of Mumyeong's incredible growth in power. Deeper in the woods, the lead Tang warrior checked his makeshift sundial. He looked increasingly agitated, wondering why the 3 men he sent to kill the Lord hadn't returned yet. Time was ticking away. 45 minutes had passed since the trio left, and the silence from the forest was starting to feel very heavy. Something had clearly gone wrong. The leader's face twisted with worry. If his men had failed, it meant the young lord was far more dangerous than they thought, and their entire secret mission was in jeopardy. He paced back and forth, frantically planning his next move. He knew he had to destroy all evidence of their presence before the Cheon clan's hounds tracked them down. Meanwhile, news of the earlier courtyard incident was spreading among the other trainees. They were absolutely stunned that the Tang clan had tried to execute a servant over something so petty. A group of trainees walked through the forest, discussing the scary reputation of their guests. They'd heard that the Tang clan's laws were incredibly strict and often quite bloody. They whispered about the Tang clan's lethal poisons and hidden weapons. Apparently, you could be killed without even knowing who attacked you, making them a nightmare to deal with. One trainee explained that even accidental contact with a direct Tang descendant could lead to a death sentence. There were no exceptions, and everyone who crossed them usually ended up dead. He recalled a time he saw everyone freak out just to avoid bumping into the young lady. The fear they inspired was so intense that people would literally jump out of the way. This older trainee sighed, realizing they actually had it pretty good in the Cheon clan. Compared to the Tang clan monsters, their masters were almost soft, and he wasn't complaining. The others nodded, glad for their clan's weird fairness. Even if the young lord was a scoundrel, at least they weren't getting executed for every little thing, which was honestly a miracle. The trainees marveled at how strange their clan was. Even Mumyeong, who had openly defied the young lord, was still perfectly fine instead of being executed for his insolence. In any other clan, Mumyeong's head would have already been served on a platter. They couldn't believe how much disrespect the Cheon family was willing to tolerate from their own. They discussed whether they should actually step up and help Cheon Mu-ryang. He was the only one capable of standing against the Tang clan while everyone else was busy playing host. But Mumyeong looked skeptical, wondering what kind of help they could possibly offer. He knew the gap between them and the true monsters of the martial world was still massive. Suddenly, the 5-second disciple stepped forward, barking that he could no longer tolerate such disrespect. He rallied a group of followers, grandly proclaiming that the clan's prestige was now on the line. He urged the group to find the young lord first before coming up with a plan. But some trainees weren't buying his sudden act of loyalty, finding him totally untrustworthy. Turns out this guy was just a slimy opportunist looking for a way to climb the ladder. He figured if he played his cards right, he could win back everyone's favor. The creep even considered switching sides to the Tang clan if things got too dangerous. He was ready to hand over his own young lord just to save his skin. While lurking in the bushes, he spotted something sketchy deep in the forest. A Tang clan cleaner warrior was crouched on the ground, clearly up to no good in the shadows. The senior trainee froze, his eyes wide with confusion. He couldn't understand why a legendary Tang warrior would be out here alone, acting so suspicious in a secluded spot like this. He watched as the assassin tried to start a fire to burn a pile of clothes. It was obvious the guy was desperately trying to destroy evidence of some dark deed. The Tang warrior blew on the embers, his face illuminated by the growing flame. He was focused entirely on his task, unaware that he was being watched from the nearby foliage. Suddenly, the assassin's eyes snapped open in realization. He sensed someone nearby and turned his head sharply, catching the senior trainee spying on his secret little bonfire in the woods. The senior trainee didn't wait around to see what happened next. He scrambled away as fast as his legs could carry him, screaming in pure terror as he realized he was spotted. He looked back with a face full of regret, sweating buckets, as he realized he'd stumbled into a death trap. Spying on a professional killer was definitely his worst idea yet. He tumbled onto the path right in front of his companions, his heart pounding against his ribs. The other trainees just watched him fall, completely confused by his sudden, panicked entrance. He screamed at the top of his lungs, his face twisted in a mask of pure agony and fear. He realized his secret opportunity had just turned into a massive nightmare. His friends were totally baffled, asking their senior what on earth was wrong with him. They had no idea that a cold-blooded killer was right on their heels at that moment. The guy was practically hyperventilating, babbling about how he just had to see something he shouldn't have. He knew he'd messed up big time and there was no going back now. Just as the other trainees stood there looking confused, the air around them suddenly grew cold. They didn't realize that a shadow was looming over them from the trees above. No way, the Tang clan cleaner warrior launched himself into the air, sword drawn and ready to strike. He wasn't about to let any witnesses escape with his dark secrets. The senior trainee could only swear under his breath as death came screaming down at him. He knew he was in big trouble and his plan had totally backfired. Blood sprayed everywhere as the assassin's blade found its mark in a blur of motion. The senior trainee's worst fears had finally come true in the most violent way possible. In the middle of the deep forest, the Tang clan cleaner warrior is busy trying to burn a pile of incriminating evidence. He's completely caught off guard when a group of Cheon trainees suddenly surrounds him on the path. Realizing he's been spotted, the veteran assassin leaps into the air with his blade drawn. He knows he has to eliminate any witnesses before the truth about the ambush on the eldest young master gets out. His eyes are filled with a cold, desperate resolve as he targets the closest trainee. For a professional cleaner like him, failure isn't an option, and anyone who saw those clothes has to die. A loud metallic clang echoes through the trees as one of the trainees catches the heavy overhead strike. The rest of the group watches in shock as their comrade manages to hold his ground against such a powerful blow. The Cheon trainee grits his teeth, his sword vibrating under the sheer weight of the assassin's pressure. He's proving to be much stronger than his rank suggests, pushing back against the veteran warrior with surprising force. The Tang clan cleaner warrior can't believe what's happening. He fully expected to cut through these kids like they were nothing, not be stalled by a group he considers mere students. Another trainee seizes the opening and charges in, forcing the assassin to divide his attention. It's becoming clear that this won't be a one-sided massacre for the Tang veteran. The group moves with incredible coordination, their blades flashing as they hem the assassin in from all sides. The Cheon training grounds have clearly been producing much more dangerous warriors lately. The assassin pulls back to catch his breath, staring at his young opponents with genuine confusion. He's never seen trainees move with this kind of speed and tactical awareness before. The loyal trainee steps forward, proudly explaining that they aren't just any regular trainees anymore. Ever since they started training like madmen to catch up to the eldest young master, their old limits have been completely shattered. He quickly shuts his friend up with a well-timed punch before he can reveal too many embarrassing details about their bare-body drills. Some of their more intense training secrets are better left unsaid. These men are elite candidates for the Heavenly Dragon and Phoenix units, aiming for the absolute peak of the clan's forces. They've been personally forged by Commander Cheon Mu-ryang to be the clan's most overwhelming swordsmen. Only the top tier of candidates are chosen for these units, and this group represents the cream of the crop. The loyal trainee emphasizes that their strength comes from a level of dedication the assassin clearly underestimated. The Tang warrior sneers, refusing to be intimidated by a group of upstarts. He readies his blade one more time, determined to show these candidates the difference between training and a real-life duel to the death. Just as he thinks he has a chance, two more trainees emerge from the path, evening the odds even further. It's now 7 against 1, and the veteran assassin is starting to look genuinely cornered. The Tang clan cleaner was stunned. He was certain he had already taken out those two Cheon trainees first. But then his eyes widened as a chilling realization struck him. He had overlooked a crucial detail. He recalled the moment he dealt the finishing blow. Somehow, both of them had managed to draw their swords just in time to parry the lethal strike. "They're incredibly persistent," he noted grimly. The trainees maintain their formation, keeping their prisoner tightly secured as they prepare to haul him back. They know he's dangerous, so they aren't taking any chances with his capture. Instead of showing fear, the assassin starts to chuckle, a low and raspy sound that sends a chill through the group. He seems to find something deeply amusing about being captured by a group of students. He mocks them as newborn pups who have no idea how deep the world's shadows really go. Even as he's being subdued, he still acts as if he's the one in control of the situation. His arrogant boasting doesn't save him from being knocked unconscious and carried away. The group starts the long trek back to the manor, hauling their heavy prize over a shoulder. As the group marches through the woods, they carry the captured assassin like a trophy of their first major victory. It's a moment of triumph for the trainees, but the forest is still full of secrets. Lee Seok-gi, the head trainee, suddenly stops and clutches his stomach with a pained grimace. He claims his gut is in knots, and he needs a moment alone to handle some urgent business in the bushes. He tells the others to go on ahead while he catches up later, sounding like he's in a real rush. The rest of the group is annoyed by his timing, but leaves him behind to find a quiet spot. Once they're out of sight, Lee Seok's stomach pain miraculously vanishes as he kneels by the smoldering pile of clothes. He wasn't sick at all. He just needed a moment alone with the half-burnt evidence. He realizes that these partially destroyed Tang clan uniforms are a goldmine of information. He calculates that holding on to this proof could be his insurance policy if he ever needs to jump ship and join the Tang clan. Without hesitating, he stuffs the charred fabric into the front of his robes, hiding it carefully away. He's always been an opportunist, and today he just found his biggest leverage yet. He yells out another excuse to the departing group, pretending he's still struggling with his stomach issues. He's a master of making his cowardice and greed look like a simple case of bad timing. The quiet forest atmosphere settles as he finishes hiding his treacherous prize. The narrator notes that while Lee Seok is a total jerk, his selfish decision ironically ended up saving the most important piece of evidence. Deeper in the woods, another squad of trainees is frantically searching for the eldest young master before the banquet begins. They know if he's missing for the start, there's going to be serious trouble with the Tang guests. One of them suddenly pauses, his ears picking up a faint movement nearby. There's someone standing in the clearing just ahead, and they don't look like an enemy. In a secluded spot, Cheon Mu-ryang calmly inspects a small glass vial with a focused look in his eyes. He's completely transformed, no longer the bloated scoundrel everyone remembers, but a lean and athletic warrior. He stands over a fallen body with a cold intensity, looking like a man who has finally taken control of his destiny. The transition is complete, and the new Mumyeong is ready to face his family and his enemies. Back at the main manor, the sun begins to set over the grand banquet hall where the clan alliance is about to be celebrated. The atmosphere is tense as everyone waits for the high-ranking masters to arrive. A pair of sturdy boots steps onto the red carpet as the announcement rings out through the room. The patriarch is finally making his entrance, signaling that the official proceedings are now underway. The guests all fall silent and bow deeply as the powerful figure walks through the center of the hall. Every eye is fixed on the man who holds the absolute authority of the Cheon family. Cheon Mu-ryang stands tall at the front, his presence alone enough to command the entire room's attention. He looks every bit the formidable, profound realm master that he is rumored to be. With his sharp amber eyes and stern, dignified beard, the patriarch surveys the assembled crowd. He's a man who values strength and loyalty above all else, and his gaze is enough to make anyone tremble. The guests whisper in hushed tones, completely struck by how handsome and elegant the patriarch looks. Even members of the rival Tang clan can't help but be impressed by his regal aura. To the martial artists in the hall, he is seen as a perfectly forged sword, sharp, refined, and incredibly dangerous. He is the ultimate paragon of what every swordsman in the clan aspires to become. Cheon Mu-ryang brings his hands together in a formal greeting, officially opening the banquet. The stage is set for a major political move, and the air is thick with anticipation for what's about to be announced. Inside the grand banquet hall, Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang stands before his assembled guests with a dignified air. He thanks everyone for gracing the event with their presence. Before the festivities officially begin, he announces that he has a very special guest to introduce to the assembly. All eyes are on him, waiting for the reveal. A guard's voice rings out through the hall, loudly announcing the arrival of the lady of the Sichuan Tang clan. The guests are immediately on edge at the mention of the legendary poison masters. The massive doors creak open, and a hush falls over the crowd. Rumors about the mysterious Sichuan Tang clan have everyone whispering in anticipation of what's to come. Tang Sohai makes her grand entrance, radiating an aura of cold beauty while flanked by her formidable entourage. The guests are captivated, nodding that she truly lives up to her reputation as the greatest beauty in Sichuan. Cheon Mu-ryang looks on, his expression unreadable as he explains the purpose of this gathering. He emphasizes the need to develop and solidify their clan's long-standing relationship with the Tang family. With a firm and authoritative voice, the patriarch officially declares a marriage alliance between the two powerful families. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. The declaration sends a shockwave through the guests, who immediately start gossiping about the match. Many are bewildered, wondering why such a prestigious lady would be paired with the clan's notorious deadbeat eldest son. Cheon Mu-ryang narrowed his eyes, carefully observing the crowd's reaction. He seemed to be calculating every detail of this high-stakes political maneuver. Behind her ornate fan, Tang So-hai lets out a small, satisfied smirk. To her, everything seems to be going exactly according to her meticulous plan. She looks directly ahead, confident that now that the patriarch has made the official declaration, the decision is final and cannot be reversed. She's won this round. Cheon Mu-ryang, however, seems preoccupied as he notes the absence of the Council of Elders. He wonders if his main family will ever be truly united in their goals. Turning to an attendant, the patriarch asks where his eldest son is, having ordered him to attend no matter what. The nervous servant reports that Mumyeong is nowhere to be found on the grounds. Tang So-hai and her advisor exchange a knowing glance. Since the scoundrel hasn't appeared yet, they believe their earlier interference with him was a complete success. They've even stationed hidden personnel outside the hall under the guise of security to ensure he can't interrupt the proceedings. They think they've covered every base. Seeing no choice but to proceed without his son, Cheon Mu-ryang raises his voice and signals for the banquet to finally begin. The celebration starts, but the air is thick with unanswered questions. As night falls, the banquet hall is fully lit, standing as a beacon of the clan's power and prestige against the darkening sky. Everything looks perfect on the outside. At the main table, the patriarch is starting to lose his patience, asking once more if there's any sign of Mumyeong. The attendant's answer remains a flat yes. The boy is still missing. Mu-ryang stands up, preparing to address the room as the evening's events begin to wind down. He maintains his regal composure despite the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He starts to thank the guests again, mentioning that clan warriors will escort them safely home despite the curfew. Suddenly, a massive, booming crash interrupts his speech, echoing through the entire hall. The patriarch snaps his head toward the entrance, his eyes wide with surprise at the sudden and violent intrusion. Something is very wrong. Panic starts to spread among the guests as people shout that the front line of security has been completely broken. No one can believe anyone would dare to disrupt such a high-stakes event. A guard is sent flying through the doors, his body crashing into the floor with a violent force that shocks everyone present. It's clear that someone incredibly powerful and determined is making an entrance. The guard groans in pain as he slides across the red carpet, unable to stop himself. The guests at the tables are frozen in shock, unable to comprehend the level of strength they just witnessed. A new figure steps into the hall, his boots clicking firmly against the floor as he asks how a mere outsider could ever hope to block his path. The voice is familiar, but the tone is entirely new. Cheon Mu-ryang and the Tang representatives stare in disbelief at the entrance. The tension in the room is high enough to snap as everyone waits to see who the intruder is. Tang So-hai lowers her fan, her eyes narrowing in irritation as she realizes that her perfect plan might have just hit a major snag. Her calm facade is starting to crack. Cheon Mu-ryang strides into the center of the hall, looking nothing like the bloated scoundrel everyone remembers. He's followed by a loyal group of trainees, all moving with a newfound sense of purpose and discipline. Murmurs fill the hall as guests wonder who this lean and confident young master could possibly be. They're even more surprised to see the clan's trainees following him like he's their commanding officer. The unnamed senior trainee looks on with a mix of awe and shock, sensing the gravity of the situation. He never expected to see Mumyeong like this. The loyal trainee shouts for everyone to sheathe their swords, his voice booming through the hall with authority. He stands firmly behind his master, ready to back him up no matter what happens. Mumyeong continues his steady march toward the high table, his gaze fixed directly on his father. The hall falls into a heavy silence as the truth finally starts to sink in for everyone present. Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang can't hide his shock, staring at the skinny and refined young master standing before him. He can barely recognize his own flesh and blood after this transformation. The guests are equally stunned, their mouths hanging open as they struggle to reconcile this new version of Mumyeong with the deadbeat they used to mock. The shock in the room is palpable. The patriarch thinks to himself that it's only been a few months since he was away, yet his son has undergone an almost impossible change in such a short time. He looks completely transformed. Mumyeong stops right in front of his father, standing tall and showing no fear in the face of the patriarch's immense aura. He's no longer the coward they all knew. Cheon Mu-ryang demands an explanation for the commotion, his voice stern but clearly laced with curiosity about his son's transformation. He needs answers immediately. With a calm and resolute expression, Mu-ryang looks his father in the eye. He isn't here to make excuses, he's here to make a stand for himself and his family. The patriarch gives him a simple, cold command to speak. The entire hall holds its breath, waiting to see what the scoundrel's next move will be in this high-stakes game. Mumyeong knows that even though they're officially engaged, he has to end this toxic relationship right now. He has to take the initiative if he wants to save Mumyeong and get the antidote. He finally breaks the silence, his voice clear and unwavering as he publicly asks to cancel his engagement to Tang So-hai. The room is frozen in disbelief at his audacity. The hall erupts in an instant clamor of shock and outrage. No one can believe that the deadbeat, eldest son would ever dare to reject a marriage to a lady as high-ranking as the ice flower herself. Tang So-hai looks visibly shaken by the sudden accusation, a single bead of sweat trickling down her face as the weight of the situation sinks in. She remains silent, her jaw tight as she avoids the gaze of the assembly. Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang leans forward, his expression stern and commanding as he orders his son to explain his reasoning for such a bold and disruptive demand. The entire hall is silent, waiting for the young master's response. Cheon Mu-ryang stands his ground with newfound confidence, stating clearly that the Tang clan attempted to kill his maid, Mumyeong, right within the inner grounds of the Cheon clan. It is a direct violation of their sovereignty. He continues his testimony, revealing that the Tang party didn't stop there. They even went so far as to attack him personally after he had already revealed his identity as the eldest young master. Mu-ryang listens, his face a mask of iron. A vision of Mumyeong is shown, her face pale and marred by the dark, spreading veins of a lethal poison as she lies unconscious. Mumyeong warns that her life is currently in critical danger and time is running out. Tang So-hai stands up with a sharp motion, her voice cutting through the hall with indignation. She justifies the attack by claiming the maid soiled her clothes and was merely punished according to the Tang clan's strict laws regarding personal contact. Mumyeong's eyes flash with a dangerous intensity as he retorts that Mumyeong is not just a mere maid, but one of his own people whom he has sworn to protect. He refuses to back down on this point. So-hai grinds her teeth in frustration, her cold facade momentarily replaced by a look of pure irritation as her justification is thrown back in her face. She hadn't expected the scoundrel to be so articulate. Internally, Cheon Mu-ryang realizes that his own subordinates have been keeping him in the dark about the events on his own grounds. He notes with growing suspicion that reports regarding his eldest son always seem to be conveniently omitted. Addressing the room, the patriarch admits that he is well aware of and respects the intent behind the Tang clan's ancient and rigid laws. He seems to be siding with their guests for a moment. He acknowledges that the maid provided the cause for punishment by making forbidden contact, which the Tang clan warrior behind So-hai watches with a calculating gaze. The legal argument seems to be leaning in the Tang's favor. However, Mu-ryang points out that since the Cheon clan cannot enforce the laws of another family, Mumyeong's decision to step in was a justifiable act of self-help. He frames it as a matter of internal clan discipline. To the relief of the Tang party, Mu-ryang declares that he will not make a formal issue out of the incident involving the maid. He looks down at his son with an expression that is both stern and disappointed. Mumyeong looks on in disbelief as his father continues, stating that while the situation is unfortunate, they cannot cancel a marriage alliance decided by both clans for such a minor reason. The political weight of the deal is too great. Tang So-hai can't help but let out a smug smirk, feeling she has successfully navigated the crisis and kept the alliance intact. She thinks she has won the war of words. But the patriarch's expression shifts as he utters a single, ominous, however. He isn't finished with his interrogation of the young lady just yet. He turns his gaze directly to So-hai, his voice low and dangerous as he asks if it is true that she knowingly attacked the eldest young master of the Cheon clan with a sword. He warns her that attacking the future leader of the clan is a grave offense that could lead to the annulment of the entire engagement. He demands that she answer him very carefully. Realizing that his father has finally trapped her with the one thing they cannot ignore, Mumyeong's face lights up with a triumphant yes, as the tide of the banquet turns in his favor. Tang So-hai doesn't even blink, denying the whole thing with a stone-cold expression. She brushes it off as a minor punishment for a maid gone wrong, but someone in the crowd isn't having it. One of the trainees steps up, swearing that what he saw was a calculated hit on the young master. Tang So-hai just hides behind her fan, mockingly asking if he has anything better than just his word. She turns the tables, accusing the trainees of lying to protect their master and threatening them with a perjury charge. That word alone is enough to make the group start sweating, wondering if they're about to get dragged down with him. Cheon Mu-ryang doesn't look worried. He just tells them to bring in the main attraction. Two men are roughly dragged into the center of the hall, their hands tied behind their backs. So-hai's eyes go wide. She clearly wasn't expecting this. The two captives are kicked onto their knees, right in front of everyone. A trainee explains these guys were caught in disguise, armed with poison meant for Mumyeong. Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang's face goes from shock to pure, unadulterated rage in a second. The trainee reveals they got the truth out of them by making them drink their own medicine. One of the poisoners is losing it, crying about his face rotting while the trainee explains they were meant to keep Mumyeong away. The loyal trainee chimes in, testifying that Mumyeong has been training like a maniac for months. He's so confident that he tells them to do their worst, because he's willing to stake his life on the truth. The patriarch stares down the room, his expression unreadable as the tension hits a boiling point. Tang So-hai demands to see the evidence, and Mumyeong just shoots her a sharp look, telling her he's got plenty. They produce a small vial, which the medical hall has already flagged as a powerful paralyzing drug. The trainee points out the obvious. Only a place like the Sichuan Tang clan could cook up something this sophisticated. The guests start whispering, wondering if the Tang clan has been planning a betrayal this whole time. Mumyeong steps closer to So-hai, asking her how she likes the taste of his proof. He knows he's got the momentum, but he needs to push a little harder to seal the deal. But So-hai just lets out a laugh, calling his whole argument a joke. She points out that just having a drug doesn't mean they were going to use it on him. She adds that trainee uniforms aren't exactly hard to find, casting doubt on the whole setup. She suggests it's way more likely that this was an inside job orchestrated by someone in the Cheon clan. Then she takes a jab at their medical hall, suggesting they get a second opinion from the Tang clan. Mumyeong's confidence wavers as he realizes she's finding holes in his story way too fast. She peers over her fan, asking if he's got anything else or if that's the best he can do. The loyal trainee and others are on the ground, wounded, as they're accused of being attacked. Mumyeong looks down, sweating as the crowd starts to turn on him again. He can feel the momentum shifting back to her, and he's starting to run out of options. At the head table, Tang So-hai looks like she's already won this round. Even the patriarch starts to agree, admitting that a medical opinion isn't the same thing as a fact. He looks at his son, asking if there's any other evidence that can actually prove his claim. He warns Mumyeong that if he's just making this up to ruin the marriage, there's going to be hell to pay. Falsely accusing an ally is a huge crime, and the patriarch isn't going to let it slide. He gives his son an ultimatum: show more proof or get disowned and handed over to the Tang clan. Cheon Mu-ryang stares him down, asking one last time if he has anything else to show. Mumyeong is sweating bullets, realizing just how much of a disaster this is becoming. He's stuck because right now, he doesn't have a single shred of evidence left to present. Cheon Mu-ryang knows he can't wait for a formal investigation. By the time the truth comes out, the marriage will be finalized and Mumyeong will be long gone. He realizes he has to end this entire dispute right here, right now. He scans the crowd and spots the head trainee, Lee Seok-gi, who's clutching his stomach and looking for any excuse to sneak away to the latrine. Something about the guy's behavior catches Mumyeong's eye. He wonders why Seok-gi is acting so strange, looking far too relaxed for someone whose life is supposedly on the line along with the other trainees. A realization strikes him as he watches the head trainee's every movement. He notices something bulky hidden beneath the guy's blue robes. It clicks, Seokgi is carrying a Tang clan warrior uniform. Mumyeong's mind flashes back to the forest, remembering how Seokgi came running out of the brush to find him. Back then, Mumyeong had confronted him, sensing that the head trainee was holding something back about the earlier attack. He had pressed him to consider why the Tang clan would suddenly target the Cheon family's eldest son on their own turf. Seokgi tried his best to play dumb, claiming he hadn't seen anything suspicious at all. Mumyeong didn't buy it for a second, warning him that since they were both deep in this mess, any attempt at betrayal would be a death sentence. Seokgi protested loudly about his undying loyalty, even though his eyes were darting around looking for an exit. They continued deeper into the woods, but Mumyeong kept a sharp eye on the man's every step. The memory of that snake-like behavior only fuels Mumyeong's current plan. He knows that Seokgi is hiding evidence for his own gain, but he's about to force it out of him using pure terror. Returning to the present, Mumyeong addresses his father with a look of desperate sincerity. He begs the patriarch to forgive the other trainees, offering himself up as the only one to be punished if the truth can't be proven. Cheon Mu-ryang shuts him down immediately, declaring that a conspiracy against the clan alliance is a grave crime that demands all 7 trainees be punished. The mention of all 7 trainees being punished hits Seokgi like a lightning bolt. The rest of the group is visibly shaken as the reality of their situation sinks in. Seokgi panics, unable to believe he's being lumped in with the others after trying so hard to stay neutral. Mumyeong twists the knife, asking if the mastermind who led the plot, specifically naming Seokgi, will face an even harsher execution. Lee Seokgi's face drained of all color as he realized the patriarch's silent nod was his own death warrant. Seokgi is freaking out internally because his whole retirement plan relied on handing that uniform over to the Tang clan in secret. He had it all figured out. If the marriage went through, he'd return the clothes to the Tang clan and get a cushy position as their disciple. But if he stays quiet now, he'll be executed as a traitor before he ever gets the chance. Mumyeong shouts for his father to kill all 8 of them together, making sure Seokgi feels the full weight of the threat. He specifically asks for Seokgi to be buried right next to him, requesting an execution so brutal that it will be talked about for generations. He starts listing off gruesome details, from pulling out fingernails to gouging out eyes and ripping out tongues. Just as Mumyeong gets to the part about spilling guts, Seokgi finally cracks and screams at the top of his lungs that he has the evidence. Mumyeong lets out a satisfied smirk, knowing his gamble on the man's cowardice just paid off. The patriarch looks on with genuine surprise as the sudden confession changes everything. Even Tang So-hai can't hide her shock behind her fan as her defense starts to crumble. Desperate to save his own skin, Seokgi pulls out the charred remains of a uniform he's been hiding. He drops to his knees and presents the proof that the intruders were indeed wearing Tang clan colors. He explains how he saw the assassins trying to burn the clothes to destroy the evidence after their failed ambush. Sweating and gasping for air, he begs for forgiveness, claiming he was just trying to verify everything before reporting it. The other trainees look at him with a mix of relief and newfound respect, completely unaware of his real motives. The atmosphere in the hall shifts instantly as the Tang clan's elder steps forward, his face dark with fury. Without warning, he lashes out with a wave of energy that sends one of the trainees tumbling backward. He stands protectively before So-hai, ready to settle this with martial force now that the political lies have failed. Tang So-hai stares at the burnt remains of the uniforms, her internal monologue screaming about the incompetence of her subordinates who failed to dispose of such vital evidence. She hides her fury behind her fan, trying to maintain her cool while her mind races to find a way out of this disaster. She tries one last bluff, questioning how anyone can prove those clothes actually belong to the Tang clan's warriors. Cheon Mu-ryang doesn't skip a beat, warning her to watch her tone before she finds herself on the receiving end of a very serious legal charge for her lies. He leans in and mentions the Cheon clan's tracker dog, Thunder, who's been specifically trained to follow even the faintest of scents. He asks her directly what will happen when the dog leads them straight from those clothes to her own people. So-hai grits her teeth, her composure finally breaking as Mumyeong mocks the Tang clan's pride in their own venom hounds, stating even a common dog could sniff out the scent on those uniforms. He lays out his terms: hand over the antidote for the maid and accept a quiet annulment of the engagement, or face the full public disgrace of a trial. He pushes her into a corner, asking if the mighty Tang clan can truly handle the mockery that will follow once their shameless lies are exposed to the world. So-hai tries to regain some ground, asking if he's really willing to risk an all-out war with her clan over the life of a mere maid. Mumyeong doesn't blink, reaching out his hand and demanding the antidote once more. The pressure is visible on So-hai's face as she sweats through her makeup, her eyes filled with a mixture of rage and panic. That's when the Tang clan elder decides to end the debate, slamming his hands onto the table with a thunderous crash that sends dishes flying everywhere. A violent surge of purple energy erupts from his body, filling the immediate area with a crackling, dangerous pressure. Whispers ripple through the hall as people recognize the purple cloud flame chi, an advanced technique that only the most elite masters can manifest. The elder roars in fury, accusing the Cheon clan of disrespecting their honored guests and turning a celebration into a public execution. He claims that no one has ever been this disrespectful to his sect and lived to tell the tale. Cheon Mu-ryang rises from his seat, his own purple aura flaring up to match the elder's, telling him to watch his mouth before things get out of hand. The guests are stunned to see two masters clashing with such immense flame chi, a sight most of them have never witnessed in their entire lives. The Tang elder is taken aback, clearly not expecting Mumyeong to match his power so effortlessly. Cheon Mu-ryang reaches for his weapon, the air in the room becoming thick with the scent of ozone and the promise of violence. The Tang clan warriors don't hesitate, drawing their blades and preparing for a bloodbath right there in the banquet hall. In response, the Cheon clan's trainees and warriors unsheathe their own swords, their faces grim and determined. The entire room is frozen in a tense standoff, with dozens of armed warriors ready to tear each other apart at the slightest signal. The visiting guests watch in horror, wondering if the Tang clan has truly gone insane to start a fight in the heart of Cheon territory. Patriarch Mumyeong stands at the center of the storm, his presence so overwhelming that it seems to suppress the light in the room. He speaks with a deceptive calm, asking Elder Tang to lower his anger before someone gets hurt. The elder sneers, accusing the Cheon clan of being the only ones who actually want to break this alliance. Mumyeong offers a hollow apology if his actions were misunderstood, but his expression remains cold as ice. He emphasizes that while a peaceful solution is preferred, the current situation has reached a breaking point. The guests can feel the massive shift in the atmosphere as Mumyeong prepares to demonstrate his true strength. A brilliant, multicolored radiance begins to spiral around the patriarch, completely eclipsing the purple aura of the Tang elder. With a single, decisive movement, Mumyeong unleashes the full weight of his cultivation. 5 colossal pillars of light erupt from the ground behind him, piercing through the ceiling as the legendary heavenly 5-bladed rainbow sword is revealed. The observers are paralyzed with awe, realizing they are witnessing a technique from the profound realm that many only hear about in stories. Mumyeong stares down his opponents, his voice echoing through the hall as he warns them that even his legendary patience has its limits. Close up on the patriarch's eyes, glowing with a divine intensity that leaves no doubt, he is ready to wipe out anyone who continues to test him. Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang stands tall as his presence fills the entire hall with a heavy pressure. He doesn't waste any time, commanding his captain to look into those Tang clan uniforms the trainees found. The bundle of burnt black clothing is brought forward as solid proof of the ambush. The patriarch orders everyone involved to be questioned separately, so their stories can't be coordinated. Mumyeong makes it clear that he'll be cross-examining every single testimony to sniff out the lies. With the investigation officially underway, he puts the marriage alliance on hold indefinitely. The Tang elder watches in silence, realizing they completely underestimated the Cheon clan's resolve. He knows they have the raw power to wipe their rivals out, but doing it now would be too risky. Even his own men are trembling, their legs going weak under the patriarch's overwhelming aura. Standing before that kind of power, makes any thought of defiance feel totally impossible. To the elder, even thinking about opposing a man like Wigang feels like a sin against heaven. Dang Sohai notices her people have lost their will to fight after witnessing that show of might. She hides her frustration behind her fan, wondering how things went south so fast. Her inner thoughts are filled with venom as she vows to repay this humiliation 1,000-fold. She speaks up, challenging the patriarch by asking if the Cheon clan is still a martial family. Wigang and his advisors look down from the dais, waiting to see what game she's playing. Sohai suggests settling the whole dispute the martial way, with a final decision by duel. Mumyeong isn't in the mood for talk and tells her to just hand over the antidote and leave. She pulls out a small blue vial, holding the cure up for everyone to see. She offers to throw in the medicine as a bonus if the young master can actually win the duel. Her tone turns icy as she guarantees the maid will die tonight if he refuses to fight. She warns that a messy annulment like this will only lead to an inevitable bloodbath between their families. She tells him to quit whining and accept the challenge if he really wants to save lives. Since she's just a fragile lady, she brings forward her personal bodyguard to represent her. The warrior steps up, looking like a professional killer ready to end this quickly. Patriarch Wigang points out that being a martial family doesn't mean they have to agree to every duel. Mumyeong addresses her directly, his expression cold and focused. He tells Sohai to keep her word and asks his father for permission to handle the duel himself. The elders on the dais look on with concern, unsure if the scoundrel can actually pull this off. Wigang is stunned, wondering how his son plans on facing a professional Dang clan warrior. Elder Cheon Mu-ryang leans in and tells his brother to just trust the boy and watch what happens. Wigang remains silent, staring at his son's back as if he's seeing a complete stranger. In his mind, Mumyeong is still just the lazy, irresponsible piece of trash he's always been. A loner who never had a single friend or ally standing by his side. The idea of actually entrusting the clan's future to such a boy feels almost absurd to him. After a long pause, the patriarch hardens his gaze and looks directly at Mumyeong. He officially accepts the decision by duel, nomming his first son as the Cheon clan's representative. Mumyeong locks eyes with his opponent while Sohai wears a sinister, knowing smirk. He tells the group to clear out the tables and chairs so they have room for the festivities. The Dang elder watches the staff moving in perfect sync, clearly impressed by the discipline. He makes a sarcastic comment about what a perfect pair the two fighters make. Sohai hides her face behind her fan, giving her warrior the final order to do his best. Dang Sohai keeps a cold, unreadable expression as the final details of the duel are settled. She leans in, whispering a final, ruthless reminder to her warrior. With a sinister smile behind her fan, she makes it clear that any accidents in this duel are off the books. She even jokes that her devotion to Mumyeong won't waver, even if he ends up losing an arm today. A heavy silence settles over the hall as the two combatants take their positions on the red carpet. The official shouts the signal to begin, and the atmosphere in the room instantly shifts. Cheon Mu-ryang draws his blade, his movements surprisingly fluid and controlled for someone with his reputation. The Tang clan warrior draws his own sword, standing ready to fulfill his lady's cruel orders. The match kicks off as both men rush toward each other in a blur of motion. A quick draw, the sound of steel ringing through the air as the first strike is thrown. Their blades meet for the first time, sending sparks flying across the red carpet. The warrior bears down on him, his expression a mask of cold professionalism. Mumyeong grits his teeth, feeling the raw power behind the professional fighter's strike. He doesn't flinch, his eyes glued to his opponent's every movement. He swings back, testing the warrior's defenses with a series of quick, calculated strikes. They circle each other, a deadly dance where one slip means certain injury. Just like their previous encounter, the escort warrior effortlessly parries Mumyeong's strikes. Suddenly, a pink glow begins to emanate from the warrior's blade, the sign of high-level sword chi. The escort warrior continues to press Mumyeong with his usual tactics, but this time, he unleashes a strike dripping with lethal intent, aimed squarely at taking a life. Mumyeong lets out a pained cry as the sword chi from the strike begins to tear into his body. At such close range, he has zero chance of pulling his blade back to defend. Stomping hard against the ground, he desperately struggled to maneuver through the dire situation. The lethal strike slashed through nothing but empty air. Mumyeong was no longer where he had stood just a second ago. Mumyeong leaped into the air, narrowly dodging the attack by a hair's breadth. Mumyeong lands and resets his stance, but the pressure is clearly rising. The warrior stands his ground, his blade now fully engulfed in vibrant pink sword chi. The spectators are in shock. Using such a high-level technique on a scoundrel like Mumyeong seems like total overkill. The warrior looks at him with pure disdain, thinking he's already won. But Mumyeong is calm, his mind racing as he analyzes the flow of his opponent's energy. A knowing smile pulls at the corner of Mumyeong's mouth as he figures out the trick. He points his sword at the warrior, calling out the secret behind his heaven technique. The warrior's gaze sharpens. He wasn't expecting the trashy son to know his secret arts. Mumyeong doesn't wait around and just tells him to come and get it. His boots kick up dust as he launches himself into another frantic exchange. He charges down the hall, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. The warrior swings his pink-infused blade in a wide, lethal arc meant to end the fight. Mumyeong parries the blow, the clash of their blades ringing through the hall. He knows he's outclassed in raw power. He's facing a first-class swordsman after all. Their exchange becomes a blur of motion and clashing steel as they move through the hall. He can see the warrior is getting overconfident, thinking he's already dictated the flow of this fight. They trade blows at a blistering pace, the warrior pressing his advantage with every strike. A heavy kick grazed Mumyeong's face, sending sweat and chi spray flying into the air. But that's fine with him. He knows that overconfidence makes a fighter reveal their true intentions too early. The warrior steps forward, thinking he has the perfect opening to finish the duel. Mumyeong watches him come, ready to pull the rug out from under his overconfident opponent. The Tang clan warrior zeroes in on Mumyeong's arm, determined to fulfill his lady's cruel order. Mumyeong catches the strike on his blade, the pink energy of the warrior's sword chi crackling violently against his own steel. "You want my arm?" Mumyeong counters, his voice steady despite the overwhelming power of the blow he's holding back. He plants his feet firmly on the red carpet, absorbing the impact as the warrior continues his frantic assault. With a sudden burst of speed, Mumyeong dares his opponent to actually try and take what he wants. Spinning into a counterattack, his movements became a blur of white and gold as he launched himself at the towering man. The Tang clan warrior sneered, recognizing the technique Mumyeong was using. He had easily neutralized this very move last time. Their blades clash again, but this time it's Mumyeong who is dictating the pace, his eyes fixed on his target. The warrior snaps, mocking Mumyeong for attempting the same trick twice and calling him stupid for it. A manic, overconfident laugh escapes the warrior as he prepares a final, crushing strike. "I'll sever your arm along with your sword," he bellows, putting everything into one massive overhead swing. High above the arena floor, Elder Cheon Mu-ryang and another official watch the exchange with grim intensity. Elder Cheon Mu-ryang remains motionless, his sharp eyes missing nothing as he reflects on the difference between knowledge and mere opinion. Below, the warrior continues his assault, unaware that his perception of Mumyeong is just a rigid opinion formed in the past. The sword chi clinks and sparks, a physical manifestation of a fighter who treats his opponent like a wax statue rather than a living threat. Elder Cheon Mu-ryang watches the warrior's overconfidence, nodding that once a fighter believes they truly know an opponent, they become unable to see reality. The warrior's face is twisted in a cruel, triumphant grin, convinced he's already won the duel. But he's wrong. Mumyeong's eyes flare with a dangerous red light as he taps into a hidden reservoir of internal power. The pink sword chi slashes through empty air as Mumyeong moves with impossible speed, his cloak billowed by the force of his movement. He passes through the warrior's guard like a ghost, leaving only a streak of light in his wake. The warrior freezes, a look of pure shock crossing his face as he realizes his strike hit nothing but air. Mumyeong is already behind him, his own blade sweeping through the air in a decisive, unseen arc. His eyes continue to glow with that eerie red light, the physical manifestation of his intense focus and sudden power surge. Patriarch Cheon Mu-ryang leans forward in his seat, his eyes wide with disbelief at the technique his son just displayed. The warrior's grip fails, and his sword clatters uselessly onto the red carpet, the duel effectively over. He collapses, a choked scream of agony and frustration escaping his throat as the reality of his defeat sets in. The match is decided. Elder Cheon Mu-ryang's voice booms across the hall, officially ending the combat. He looks down at his nephew with newfound respect, recognizing a variant of the legendary reverse-scale slash. Mu-ryang stands tall over the defeated warrior, though his breathing is heavy and his posture is rigid from the strain. Dang So-hai stands frozen in the background, her fan lowered as her jaw drops in absolute shock. Her mind repeats a single phrase over and over. This shouldn't have been possible for a man of his reputation. Mu-ryang doesn't gloat. He simply extends his hand, palm up, toward the woman who orchestrated the confrontation. "Hand over the antidote," he demands, his voice raspy but firm. "Keep your promise." So-hai grits her teeth, her face twisted with a mixture of anger and humiliation as she glares at her future husband. She tosses the small blue glass vial through the air, her movements sharp and resentful. Mu-ryang catches the antidote and immediately turns away, his body beginning to tremble from the massive physical backlash. He begins to walk down the center of the hall, his steps slightly uneven as he tries to hide his growing weakness. This is bad, he thinks, cold sweat beading on his forehead as his internal energy starts to spiral out of control. The constant pressure from the warrior's sword chi has caused his governing vessel to open prematurely. A mass of yin energy is now flooding his meridians, causing his internal energy to flow in reverse and damaging his body from the inside. A trickle of blood begins to leak from his nose, and his skin becomes deathly pale. His vision begins to dim and blur, the grand hall of the Cheon family fading into a dark, hazy tunnel as his consciousness slips. Mu-ryang collapses face down on the red carpet, his body finally giving out under the immense internal strain. The small vial of antidote slips from his fingers and rolls a short distance away across the fabric. The glass bottle lies just out of reach, reflecting the dim light of the hall as Mu-ryang's consciousness begins to fade. A single, desperate thought echoes in the silence as his grip on reality slips away. With blood trickling from his nose and his vision failing, Mu-ryang lies motionless on the floor. His last conscious thought is a fixated plea. He has to get the antidote to Hwalyang, no matter the cost to his own life.